Okay. I will go ahead and call to order the Tuesday, August 16th, 2022 regular meeting of the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors. First up, I will hand it right over to Ms. Centrise Martin, and she is our manager who's going to let us know how to best participate in this hybrid meeting format and also take a roll call of the board. Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the board, the staff, and public for joining us this evening for the August 16th regular meeting of the Board of Supervisors. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend online using the Zoom platform, and the main meeting room is available for members of the public to attend in person. If you are joining the Zoom meeting tonight and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please say your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public attending using the Zoom platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. And finally, Madam Chair, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the Zoom meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Ms. Deneni?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Ms. Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Present.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. All right, first up on our agenda is citizens' input. Would anyone care to comment on anything that is not on our agenda this evening? If you would, please state your name, your municipality of residence, and let us know your thoughts. All right, seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the swearing in of Jeremy Thompson as the Ward 2 Supervisor. With that, I believe I will hand it over to Ms. Martin, the judge. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I will introduce, it's my pleasure to introduce Judge Katie Oliver, who has joined us this evening to swear in our newly appointed Board of Supervisors, Mr. Jeremy Thompson.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. You may certainly. I'm just going to take a few pictures. Great, thank you. Wonderful.
Raise your right hand, please. I, Jeremy Thompson, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support, obey, and defend the Constitution of the United States, the Constitution of the Commonwealth, and the ordinances of the Township of Ferguson, and that I will discharge the duties of my office as Township Supervisor with fidelity, that I have not paid or contributed or promised to pay or contribute either directly or indirectly any money or other valuable thing to procure my appointment, except for necessary and proper expenses expressly authorized by law, that I have not knowingly violated any election law of the Commonwealth or procured it to be done by others on my behalf, that I will not knowingly receive directly or indirectly any monies or other valuable thing for the performance or non-performance of any act or duty pertaining to my office, other than the compensation allowed by law. If you so swear, please say I do.
I do.
Excellent. Congratulations.
All right, let's take a moment for the seating of Mr. Jeremy Thompson.
Wherever you're most comfortable.
Well,
I think Hillary is that right.
Makes sense over here.
I think that's
COVID kind of scrambled us all anyway.
yes. This is your knife, right? So if you want to, you can. It doesn't.
Okay. Thank you.
welcome Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the approval of the minutes. I will entertain a motion to approve the July 12th, 2022 Board of Supervisors work session minutes.
This is Patty, so moved.
Do I have a second?
Second, this is Sierra.
Thank you. Any corrections, comments, concerns? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed, same sign. All right, motion passes unanimously. Okay, we are on to authorities, boards, and commissions report. I've got none for tonight. So let's move through to the special reports and acknowledgements. First up, we have an acknowledgement of the month-long observance of Black August, and later there'll be a proclamation on such. And then we'll move on to the, another acknowledgement, community economic development. Our Route 45 Getaways week-long event concluded successfully, thanks to all that participated in all of the ways. And then we'll bump back up to our township and fiscal responsibility. We'll have an introduction to Aaron Jolin, stormwater engineer. Ms. Martin, did you want to introduce? Or, yes, please.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to introduce to the Board of Supervisors, Mr. Aaron Jolin, recently hired to fill our stormwater engineer position within our Public Works Department. Mr. Jolin, if you would like to say a few words, you are welcome to do that, but you are not obligated.
Just wanted to say thanks, and I'm very excited to be here and serve the community. I think you guys have done, the Ferguson Township as a whole has done a great job with management of stormwater and addressing the concerns, and is more of a forerunner in the state, I would say, as far as adhering to the rules and recognizing the requirements to introduce monetary policy to meet the requirements for doing it. So.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Were we able to catch that on CNET?
Yeah.
Okay, all
We
right,
got a thumbs
fantastic.
up.
We've got a thumbs up. I mean, that was some important information there. Sorry, I should have done my job better and directed you up to the podium as opposed to waiting to after the fact. But appreciate those words about, our approach towards stormwater management, and appreciate having you aboard. So welcome. Thank you so much.
This isn't on the record, but I'm gonna exit and go to my computer for the day.
Very good. Yes, please, go home from work,
Good night.
please.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night. Okay, and now let's go ahead and move on to COG and Regional Committee reports. We're on to the Human Resources Committee report. That would be Ms. Williams.
Yes, I don't have it attached, but I just wanted to acknowledge that we've been talking a lot about raising minimum wages and looking at different things, especially when it comes to the fire chief and those sorts. And I just kind of want us to look within our own municipality and making sure that we're paying minimum wages to our people, and seeing how we can make sure we benefit the entire COG with the Human Resource Committee. And if you guys have any opinions or views on different positions that come through, and you have something that you want to be said at the Human Resource Committee, you're always welcome to come, but please send it through me, because I always want to make sure I acknowledge whatever concerns we have when it comes to those kind of things.
Thank you. And in particular, are you bringing to light, when you're talking about the wages, that $15
Minimum, yes.
as a baseline?
Yes,
I think we have a comment coming up later in the COG CIP that we previously discussed, but yeah, I'm definitely supportive of that. So if you're looking for any direction on that, you've got my thumbs up if that counts for something.
thank you.
You bet, you bet. All right, okay. Next up, we have Land Use and Community Infrastructure and/or the Lucy Committee, Ms. Strickland.
Thanks very much. Yes, I don't have a report attached either. There was a lot of information in the agenda, and also I forwarded an additional document that's in the SharePoint folder, and that is the update on the county affordable housing study. And there is just so much information in there that I didn't really need to repeat in a different report. So just a couple of quick things I wanted to highlight from the update on the study. And again, you can see that it's in the SharePoint folder, and I think also through an attachment. One concern is that the student data is not able to be pulled out just as that, of course. And they're using census tract data, and so it's very difficult to pull that out. as they move forward with analysis, they're going to try to pull out the age demographic, so 18 to 24, to try to better reflect the housing conditions. So as it stands now, if you look at the data, you can see that there's a real gap between affordable rental properties. What it appears to show is that very, very low income are forced to rent very, very high cost rental units. And so none of that can be directly attributable at this point to students renting new high-cost apartments.
Luxury
Yes.
student housing.
Yes, you can't directly relate that, only anecdotally at this point. So that's, it's a problem in that you can't just look at the data at face value. So hopefully as that process moves forward, and the consultant and the planners working on this are obviously fully aware of that. So they're trying to work around that. I did ask about pulling out municipal data, because that's been something that we've wanted just for our own use, is looking just at Ferguson Township. And so we'll look again at that and see what was able to be pulled out.
I think that's a really important point to emphasize, that our interest in municipal data when it comes to the COG.
Yeah.
I think that really is across all areas of the COG.
Right, and
That
so
need for that municipal data for our own
Yeah.
purposes and to best cooperate.
yeah,
So,
it's important
just
for
highlight that.
us in that, in this particular issue, we need that data for ourselves. Participating in this study will hopefully make it so that we don't have to conduct our own in the future, that we'll get all the data we need. If you're looking at census tract data, one problem is that the State College area is a census tract, and so it is difficult. You have to go in and pull out by zip code, so it does make this particular type of study really difficult to pull out municipal data like that. But if we can get raw data, then and links to whatever American the community survey that they're using, and that kind of thing, hopefully we can work with that and use that. But it's been mentioned, so, and I know other municipalities, I'm sure, are interested in that.
That is very interesting and makes me think of that community planner position again. It does. I'm connecting the dots on that, and really wanting to move that forward, but there's a lot of complications involved, so.
Yeah, I
Right?
mean, again, this is
Multiple
this is a study that we're participating in. All right, it's happening. It's
Yeah,
a
so
major
let's build on it.
endeavor, and so what the hope could be at this point is we get a lot of the data we need out of this one.
Mm-hmm.
So, regardless of where our own affordable housing program goes, we need
Yeah.
the numbers. So, with that, if you look, I would really encourage you to look at that update. You'll see that it highlights around the county where are the most affordable areas and where are not. There are a lot of affordable units for rent and purchase outside of the center region, as one would expect. When they're analyzing affordability, they're using opportunity indices. So in the agenda, you'll see there's an opportunity index for affordable housing, and that's prioritizing housing that is centrally located to transit, to jobs, to highly regarded school districts, and that kind of school proficiency, social mobility, transit access, health equity, jobs proximity, and labor market engagement. So those things are drawing us to look at the center region. So one of my comments, and I know we've talked about here before, is because this is a countywide study, continuing the engagement with those representatives, and there aren't that many from outside the center region that are participating with this, to help solve these problems and to encourage bringing those amenities to outside the center region, and to make those indexes improve as to what they are currently. We can't ever house everybody here, and so improving those things outside the center region, having those home prices go up, those incomes go up outside the center region, will raise those property
Right.
taxes and contribute to those school districts, improving them.
Right.
So along with that, that transit item is a major component in all of this, and because of the cuts that we're facing now, my comment was we're struggling to get service in the west end of Ferguson Township. So to consider transit as a reliable fixture around the county, I think is concerning, because we have to really look at those numbers. And so I'm going to leave it at that.
She's so good. Thank you.
So I think it
Thank
was
you
really good, and there's a
for
lot
that
of information in
analysis,
there.
yeah.
So
Yeah, any questions?
if you have any comments,
Yeah.
please share them, because as I said, the study's still ongoing, so we can still contribute back to
Right.
what they're going to put in there.
Okay,
It's nearing completion though,
Okay.
so.
okay, thank you. Anything? All right. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to Climate Action and Sustainability Committee. I believe we had our alternate attending, Ms. Tiara Williams.
Yes, I have been stepping in for former Supervisor Caldwell. I guess we'll discuss if that's the committee you would like to do. We'll talk about that later. I am catching up to what's been going on, and so I have been trying to kind of backwatch some of the meetings, but something that really stuck out to me that I do want to bring up to the board is the dashboard that they've been working on. And this is where like each municipality or entity, also meaning school board, fills in what progress is made on the dozens of objectives that we've put forth or proposed. Examples like electric cars, number of electric cars that are within that area, progress on the EV charging stations, bike-friendly community ratings, plastic usage, those things, and kind of keeping track. Kind of how Lisa was breaking down those statistics, but a dashboard, a way to just kind of look at that and keep in track of everything by municipality, by area, by school board and whatnot, and to see how we can bring that together. So I thought that was a really cool idea, very futuristic, and I mean, I guess I wouldn't have thought of that, so I thought that was a good thing to look at, but yeah, so I'm interested in going back and looking at more of those meetings and figuring out some more about
Yeah.
what all they do in climate action, because
Yeah.
some of it was a little like, oh, okay, I didn't expect.
big.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
so,
Mhm.
but yes, Jeremy, if you just want to take
Yeah,
that right on, that's
Jeremy,
fine with me.
welcome to-
But, yeah, that's all I have. If you have any extra questions, feel free to email me and I'll get the answers that you need.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, I love that dashboard concept as well. The first time I heard it, I really liked it. It was Steve Bear. Like, I still remember the time I heard it first, and I just really love that idea, and it's just so helpful to keep everybody on the same page. I do wonder if plastics were now added to that, because there was a lot of discussion about, sorry to nerd out for 1 second, we have a long meeting, I promise I won't do it too much in this meeting, but we did have a discussion about the inclusion of certain pollutants, contributing to climate change, only if they were like produced here, not just if they were used here. So like plastic bags, for example, didn't make it into a climate action plan because there was not a source, or there was not a source of production here. So anyway, it would be interesting if they talked about perhaps in the future broadening it, because like it's already big.
Exactly, right, yeah.
It would be interesting to see that as a future item, because they're a big contributor. Thank you so much. Any questions? Okay, great. Thank you so much to you, Tiara, and perhaps to you, Jeremy. Anticipation. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to public safety cancellation notice. Anything you want to identify for us, Patty, as the public safety appointee?
No, the only thing that, in terms of public safety, that I think we would like to get some word on is, PennDOT is gonna be starting that work on Atherton Street, and just wondering how that's going to affect Alpha Fire Company, and so we're sort of hoping that maybe we'll get a comment to the Public Safety Committee about any anticipated response time.
Yeah.
I was talking to the vice chair of that committee, and she was going to look into that. so.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's the communication chain there for sure. Okay, good to know. All right, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and move on to staff reports. We have the Township Manager's Report, Public Works Director, Planning and Zoning, and Chief of Police. we'll go to Township Manager. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight in your report?
There is not.
Okay. Any questions for the manager or any other staff? Okay, seeing no questions, we will go ahead and move on to unfinished business. First up, a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, adopting the 2023-2027 Capital Improvement Program, CIP, budget. This will be introduced by Ms. Century Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So provided with the agenda packet is a summary of the 2023 to 2027 Ferguson Township CIP that has been discussed at 2 previous special meetings and at the last August 2nd regular meeting. And provided with the agenda is a recommended motion for your consideration. This is a public hearing on the resolution to adopt the capital improvement plan, which will also include a roll call vote.
Thank you so much, Ms. Martin. This is a public hearing, so I will open the floor to anyone in the public that cares to comment on this matter. Seeing none, I will close the public hearing and entertain the motion that you find in your agenda. Or any other motion?
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution for the 2023 through 2026 Capital Improvement Program Plan.
Is that 2026 or 2027?
23 to 2027.
Okay.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no problem.
Sorry.
No problem.
It's
Just-
2027. Sorry, yes?
Sorry.
2023 to 2027.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Sorry, I
second-
was reading the one below it.
Yeah, there's a lot of dates and numbers floating around for sure. Yes. Do I have a second?
This is Tiara, I'll second that motion.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any further discussion on this matter? We have discussed this in many hours of meetings, but we can always discuss it more. Okay, I will then just go ahead and add an additional thank you to staff for the preparation of this document and all your work to shape it into, to first present it and then shape and reshape it into, what we are interpreting as the residents' wishes as we plan for the future 5 years here. And so just many thanks to you all for your hard work in that preparation and presentation. So we have a motion and a second. We're ready to have a roll call vote.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for Resolution 2022-17. Ms. Stevens?
Yes?
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Thompson?
Yes.
Or, excuse me. My apologies,
really great,
Mr.
though.
Jeremy
Love it.
Thompson. My apologies.
happen.
Please
Had to
accept my
happen.
Not all
apology.
misses this anymore.
It does say Mr. Jeremy Thompson in my notes.
Yes.
We got into the habit really easily, let me tell you what. That was, yeah, okay.
Yeah, I apologize.
Not a problem.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
thank you. Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Denetti.
Yes. All right,
Thank
motion
you.
passes unanimously, thank you.
I
Next.
took one for the blooper reel.
Absolutely. Okay, next up, a public hearing on an ordinance of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, amending Chapter 16, Park and Recreation, Section 101 Definitions, Section 102, Interpretation of Rules and Regulations, Section 103, Conduct Prohibited in Parks, Section 105, Traffic Control, Section 106, Regulated Uses, and Section 107, Center Region Park and Recreation Department. This will be introduced by Ms. Jenna Wargo, who's joining us via Zoom. Welcome, Jenna. Thank you so much.
Thank you. In March 2022, the Board of Supervisors adopted ordinance number 1076 that captured outstanding amendments from the Township's comprehensive updates to the zoning and subdivision land development ordinances. At the March 15th, 2022 meeting, the Board requested an additional review of Chapter 16, Parks and Recreation, for consistency with the amendments made to 27-723 mobile food vendors. At the July 19th, 2022 meeting, the Board of Supervisors received a red line amendment that myself and the Assistant Manager, James, Progar worked on for review and authorization for advertisement of a public hearing tonight. So provided in the agenda is the draft amendment to Chapter 16 and the redlined version as well. Staff's recommended motion is that the Board of Supervisors adopt the ordinance.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Jenna, for your work and your presentation of this. This is a public hearing. I will now open up the floor to anyone who would care to comment on this matter. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing, and I would be happy to entertain the motion you find in your agenda.
This is Sierra. I recommend that the Board of Supervisors adopt the ordinance amending Chapter 16 Parks and Recreation, Section 101 Definitions, Section 102 Interpretation of Rules and Regulation, Section 103 Conduct Prohibited in Parks, Section 105 Traffic Control, Section 106 Regulated Uses, and Section 107 Center Park, Region Parks and Recreation Department.
Mrs. Patty, I'll second.
Thank you so much. Do we have any further discussion on this matter? Okay, again, thank you for your work. We do have a motion and a second. This will be a voice vote. There's no resolution in here.
It's a roll call vote.
It is a
or
roll call
ordinance.
vote. Okay, an ordinance, okay, all right, I should have put my glasses back on.
That's okay.
All right, yes, please, would you do the roll
Of-
call first?
Of course. This is a roll call vote for ordinance number 1078. Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Ms. Deneni,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Motion passes unanimously, and we're on to review and discussion on the draft 2023 Center Region Council of Governments, CR-COG, Program Plan and Draft 2023 to 2027 Capital Improvement Plan. This will be introduced by Ms. Centuries Martin. Ms. Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. At the General Forum meeting of the Center Region Council of Governments meeting on Monday, July 25th, the 2023 to 2027 Capital Improvement Plan was forwarded to municipalities for review and comment as part of the agenda packet. The COG Executive Director, Mr. Eric Nordenberg, as well as the Finance Director, Mr. Joe Vigilone, is in attendance with us this evening to respond to any questions or comments from the board this evening. Staff provided a comment guide, which is also provided with your agenda packet, as well as the comments that were captured from the board discussion at the work session that was held on Thursday, at the work session on Tuesday, August, the date has escaped me, Madam Chair,
I'm getting it right now.
last Tuesday.
Yep, minus 7
August
is
12th.
9. Okay.
9th.
Let's do a
Okay.
calendar moment here.
So, there is a comment guide provided with the agenda packet that was forwarded from COG Executive Director, Mr. Nordenberg, as well as a comment guide that reflects all of the comments and questions that were noted as part of the discussion at the Tuesday, August 9th work session.
Yes.
Links to each document are provided within the agenda packet, and with that said, I will turn the floor back over to Supervisor Deneni, Madam Chair, and invite Mr. Nordenberg and Mr. Vigilone to the podium if they would like to have an opportunity for an introduction or just be available for comments or questions.
Thank you so much. Yeah, let's introduce, and then, if you're welcome to sit back down if there's a lull in questions or something like that. We'll have some dialogue, kind of play it by ear. But let's go ahead and do some introductions. Thank you for being here. Mr. Nordenberg and Mr. Vigilone, if you want to just introduce yourselves, say hi, that'd be great.
Great. Good evening, everyone. As was mentioned, I'm Eric Nordenberg, Executive Director for the Center Region Council of Governments.
Good evening. Joe Vigilone, COG Finance Director.
Thank you so much, and thanks for being here with us this evening as we move through these two comment guides. So I think what I want to do, it's a little bit of a complicated, we've got two comment guides and then we've got supporting information, and so I want to just quickly do a run through of what I'm planning on doing through this dialogue for us to kind of guide us through this. So, let's see here. All right, so we've got our COG program plan and CIP municipal comment guide that was generated by COG staff. And then, as Centuries mentioned, we've got the comment guide that was generated by the board in our work session. So I'm going to actually utilize the board's document as my guide. My attempt is going to be, as I go through, to integrate each section. So we're hitting both guides, each section. So by the time we get to the end of one document, we're to the end of both, if that makes sense. That is my goal. We'll see how that goes. Okay. So I also am going to, refer to a couple of other documents, things that maybe were previously in the previous COG CIP, like the fleet management document. It's maybe not necessary that you're able to pull them up or anything, but I just wanted to let you know I may refer to them. And then one other document I may refer to is just the budget process itself for the COG, which is something that was, came through a finance committee agenda. So I may refer to that. So, all right, so let's get started. Well, first, any questions on that, or should we just go ahead and get started? And okay, all right. With the eventual goal that when we get through these, that we're all going to be all on the same page with the exact comments that we want to send to the COG. So the first section would be an introduction or a general section for items regarding the CIP or the program plan that are general in nature or, formatting in nature. And I guess there are just a few things that I wanted to highlight based on our previous discussion and thinking about, how we can best move forward in the current climate of still somewhat uncertainty in terms of population growth in regard to the university, and then of course that affects our own provisions of services. So I'm kind of going pretty big here for a minute, so in the general comments, thinking about us talking about a revenue-driven model instead of an expenditure-driven model in our COG expenditures. So this is something that we could spend a fair amount of time talking about as an individual comment. And I'd certainly be happy to devote a little bit of time to that because it's not something we really hit on a lot at the work session. But my thought on this matter is that from what I've heard our board discuss and our concerns, that putting that on as a comment, even with somewhat limited discussion tonight, would be probably, it would help us understand where the rest of the region is at in terms of that, beginning that dialogue. So if we're all interested in beginning that dialogue, we don't have to have a statement of our preference, but beginning that dialogue, perhaps. Maybe we could take that as our comment tonight. So the comment would be, could we consider more of a revenue-driven model? And we could talk a little bit about that, inflation, if you have anything to add to that revenue-driven model versus the expenditure-driven model. So if we want to take a minute on that.
Yeah, I guess I'll repeat what I had said in the comments, or had commented before in the discussion that we had last time, was that in the CIP it was indicated that municipal contributions would increase by an agreed upon inflation rate. So maybe it was 2.6% this year. So factoring that in, and then whatever increase is expected from the formula of population growth increasing the municipal share, work within that, and planned expenditures so that we're working off of some real numbers, some, closer to expected actuals. And so I think it's helpful for planning when you're relying on the municipalities for the contributions, and it's a significant portion of a municipal budget that we plan at a different time from the COG budget. So it's, it's very complex. And so I think having a little bit of expectation built in using those established formulas would be helpful. I know, with a CIP, that wouldn't be so predictable in years to come, but at least it's, in our CIP, we have a predicted population growth. So we're using that predicted tax base growth to inform what we're increasing expected revenue by. So using that model, I know we refer back to our own municipal CIP a lot.
That's what we know.
Because there's a structure there that I find very easy to use when in planning. And so I think, this will show my limited knowledge of all of this. So I'm trying to learn at the same time, but I think if those couple of formulas are already expected and understood, I think working off of that to plan expenditures would be appropriate.
Thank you. So I'm going to move us to this comment, and then I'm going to make a meta comment on the comment, and then move us on. So this comment, I'd like us to consider that we've talked about a little bit and open to other contributions is, just a thoughtful consideration of revenue-driven, as explicated by Lisa. I'm using that phrase because I don't want to use expenditures. So that's what I'm using, if we can think of a better word, right? As captured by Lisa, in a predictable manner,
Right.
using some data and markers.
Yeah, more of a revenue-based model, trying to balance those numbers throughout the CIP as
Yes.
closely as possible.
So I would be supportive of that comment. I'd also be supportive of, if anybody, needs to talk about that comment a little bit more. Thoughts on that matter? It's kind of a large perspective, and I'll add, here's my meta comment on the comment, that we address the same issue in multiple ways with other comments and suggestions that we make throughout this document. The issue, which is like predictability, planning, and understanding what our contribution is going to look like for the COG services. So I think that there are more than one way that is suggested in here. We could pick from them, so we're just very interested in that regional dialogue, right? Okay, so first comment, and James, that one's not on the guide. Okay, great, okay. Do staff feel good with us moving? Okay, great. Okay, we will not move as slowly, I'm sure, through the rest of this. I just want to make sure that I hit these larger concepts first, so we prioritize them or as we go. So I'll just briefly hit on then prioritization is another theme that we'll hear throughout some of our comments. So prioritization of getting classification and compensation study results before hiring more staff, getting a plan to make sure that we take care of our current staff and core staffing. So prioritization, we'll get into it later, but I just wanted to touch on that while we're talking about because that then goes to this model that you're discussing, right? Priorities are driving then that. Okay. All right, let's get to intro general. First up, please use consistent fund naming across all COG documents. And Eric and Joe, I'm going to look to you for if you have questions on these, because, right, you're going to be interpreting them. I'm going to ask for a little bit of clarification, but as we go through, if there's anything that you don't understand, please, shoot a hand up or give a yell. Okay. So, for example, in this, it's like aquatics or aquatics enterprise or pools operating or pools aquatics operate, right? So that kind of a consistency across the CIP, the program plan, and the budget. Okay, so then and also with the board, I'm gonna assume that if the comment's on here and nobody says no, that the comment stays, all right? Those are
Yeah.
my assumptions. Okay. So we requested a strategic plan progress report. We'd like to replace the previous supervisor's name with the new supervisor's name in the document. Okay.
We'll be voting on it, so.
Yeah. And so we'd like to add non-voting member to clarify for PSU and SCASD. Sorry, I don't have a page reference for that. It's in the program planner in the beginning. The next one is budget separation by facility COG formula. When I was reviewing this, my recollection was that was about reformatting it to the original format. But James, I wanted to check that with you. Is that what you think that meant too? And when I say original format, I mean just being able to read every year on one page. I have it right here, it's just like last year's. So you don't have to page back and forth, like, if you want to follow, for example, code capital. Last year, you could just look at code capital 23, 24, 25, 26, 27. This year, you go code capital, okay, that's in the middle of that page, make an X there. Okay, next page, code capital, where is it? Okay, it's right there. Okay, then I remember that number. Okay, so can we revise the formatting? And I have examples if you need further clarification. Okay. So that is what I think that means there. Next, consider parks funding for regional based on current formula and parks funding for municipal park operations based on acreage and program usage. So again, this is not something set in stone. This is something that we're very interested in as consideration, something that can go to parks governance. I know COG Chair was interested in our board facilitating dialogue on certain policy items through this process. So you'll hear some of that. That's what that really is. Budget work, request separation of regional facility expenses from C20 and C21. So there's, through here in this document that you'll receive, there's multiple comments that are similar to this, all driving at the same point, which is there are regional park capital expenses in both C21 and R15. Can we understand the rationale? And our suggestion at this point was all regional park capital expenses should be out of R15, because our eventual goal is to further be able to understand the expenses for regional versus municipal in C20 and C21. Joe, question, yes.
Just to give the board some historical perspective, the R15 fund, which is the Regional Parks Fund, has mainly been regional parks development. So that would be the actual putting the park into place. C21, for the most part, has been more parks equipment. There was a point years ago where the board, not the board, but the general forum elected to put money into C21 to study a parks maintenance facility. And when that did not go forward, they utilized those funds to put it in the Hessfield driveway. Other than that, it is just equipment in C21, and it is the actual development of the parks in R15. So it was just, that's how the budget was designed long before even before I got to COG in 2010. So that was the thought process. If there's a change in the thought process, that's fine, and we can discuss it through there, but I just wanted to give some background perspective on why it is how it is.
Thank you so much, Joe. I actually noticed that same thing. The way I noticed it was that it was really the loan previously. It was R15, the loan, akin to development of the parks. But now I'm seeing there's multiple other items in there, which is why I was making that comment. Because, yeah, I can look it up in that document if you want. But we could, since we have a lot to get through, we could just kind of flag that as that question, because I think that it's already changed without stating it. So if you look at R15 right now, the expenses that are coming out of there, I believe the Hessfield fence repair, which is a repair, is coming out of there. It's not a development.
And that was facility related, not equipment related.
Right. So what you're saying is because it's equipment. So I think our
That's-
comment
it's been
would
an equipment
probably
fund.
continue to be, let's go ahead and move that equipment over to R15, because that's continuing to separate out, because other comments are like, could you say when it's at Two Deck? Could you say when it's at Spring Creek? Starting to do that, but thank you for that history.
And that's fine, yes.
Okay. So then our comment is probably, based on what Joe said, separation of regional facility expenses, including equipment, from C21 and 20 and 21. And then always page numbers on the CIP. I think we're doing that. I saw that the one on the website is now got page number. Thank you so much. Next, there's a bar graph that we were just noticing that in the CIP, that if you read it, it's the one with the green. It goes from 27 to 23. So when you look at it, if you're not paying attention, not that we don't pay attention, but if you aren't, it kind of looks like the first year of the CIP is really low, and then the last year is really high, which if you're planning, you might actually see that. But the actual line is like, it's really high in the first year. So it's just helpful, either in the narrative or just kind of identifying that. We talk about trends then with the table underneath it. So it was just a thought of just being helpful, like, oh, first year to the last year. And then could you also include the fleet management plan with the CIP? It was included in past years. It's really helpful. And it was included not this year, but in all the previous years that I could find. Could you re-include that? And again, I normally would have reserved these kinds of comments till finance, but chair really seemed to want them to come through here, so I'm rolling them through here. Okay. So yeah, could you include that? That's helpful especially for the finance person. Could you also add in, it looks like there's nothing in there for 2027 for the current fleet management plan, but they have to appear in this planning document. So I'm not sure, like this budget process, if we want to add a line that says like update fleet management plan to feed into this. I don't know, it's organizing, whatever works for you organizationally, but for us, the comment is, could we make sure we update it to drive the data then in the CIP? Then could you re-include the item narratives too? It may be the case that some of these questions that we have in here could have been answered if the narratives from last year were included in this year, because if you go back in years and you look at those narratives, you're like, oh, this is happening, and then this year, like, oh, I'm not sure what's happening, the narrative's not there. So I love the idea that we're experimenting with being efficient in the information that we present, but for us, we find these narratives in our own budget are extremely helpful, and I think that re-including them in the CIP document would be super helpful. I know you guys do them, so if you include them, that'd be great. Thank you. Could we have, this is a comment, could we have reporting for the end of the year contingency fund expenditures and the fund balance uses? This may exist currently as finance appointee. This is something that I'm kind of like learning about this year. Really want to make sure we follow up on that. Noticing that there's multiple contingency funds and just knowing what they're used for, and then maybe it's no longer contingency if we start to see a pattern and it becomes an actual expense. So yes, Joe, thank you.
Joe Vigilone, College Finance Director again. Just want to say I am working on a document for that, a fund balance roll forward to do that, but we need to close out the 4 audits that I'm involved with before I can actually publish that information.
Okay, thank you.
But if it's not published prior to, and the audits aren't finalized prior to the publishment of the budget document, it will be in a detailed budget document.
Thanks so much. I'll just leave the comment, but we know the progress, if that's okay with everybody, just so we know we're tracking. Thank you so much, Joe. Why doesn't program revenue increase with proposed indoor facility staffing? I did not work on the wording of this. Lisa, do you want to address that a little bit?
It just looked very flat. It looked pretty stagnant, the increased revenue in programming. So we would expect a greater increase with increased programming and program staff and facilities. So, you know, with a new indoor facility in Millbrook Marsh, say. So it didn't look as high of an increase as we would have expected. So I was just wondering why.
Yep, and just, we'll put that as a question,
Yeah.
not expecting any answers tonight. It's a D one. Okay, great. Okay, why is there a lack of grant funding represented in the last 3 years? We thought maybe a grant ends. We weren't really sure. Just, it's a question.
Yeah.
Do you want to elaborate at all, or did I get it?
No,
Yeah.
it was,
Just
again, that
curious.
was maybe just adding, there was such a big difference between 1 year and later years. Of course, it can't be predicted, but you know, what's the expectation that's gonna be sought? So it just seemed a low bar.
Or maybe it was in a narrative that was removed, right? So maybe it's a,
That could be that
yeah.
there was a greater one.
Yeah.
Well, grants are one things we can't count on. So if we don't know we're getting a grant, we normally can't program that in. So
right.
for later years, we would not necessarily want to rely on a grant or a donation for something. That's part of the conversation we need to continue to have with the Finance Committee is what is the source of revenue to fund certain projects. For instance, the boardwalk is in the final stages of phase 2 of planning. Once we know how much that will cost and what some of the issues are with that, then we have a better feel for what grants may be available, and then we can talk about the combination of support from municipalities, grants, donors, things like that. But at this point, we don't know any of those things.
Maybe the question, maybe we'll leave this, but maybe we'll explicate a little, like, what is expected, what are the expectations in terms of applications that are we wondering? Sometimes we get a little bit of a feel for that as a board when we're talking about our own CIP. Again, nothing guaranteed, but I mean, we
Sure.
say we'll go through with projects if we're getting a grant.
That-
And things have stalled out if we don't get a
Yes.
grant. Like, so we do that, so I think we're trying to get that feel, even if it's not like hard data, so perhaps it's a narrative.
I think that's well stated, yeah.
So, thank you so much, thank you. Okay, we are now through that. Now we're jumping to the COGS generated non-fund specific comments, general comments for COG. Should we observe Juneteenth? Yes. Okay.
Yeah, okay, sorry, we're going back
sorry,
up to the, okay.
So going to both, hitting general through,
I understand, I
Okay.
gotcha. Okay.
awesome, all right.
Flip back up to the
Yep.
picture, okay.
So these are, the quality of these are typically different, but there is some overlap. Okay, so Juneteenth celebration, yes, and this will be also sent to COG. And I don't have any draft or anything, this is our first time talking about this. Should the COG prioritize the development of a long-range 2025-year facilities plan under the guidance of Facilities Committee, design the future facilities of COG to provide services in the most efficient and cost-effective manner for the taxpayers of the Center Region? I said a resounding yes to this, and I'm gonna keep moving through these because I'm just gonna try to predict how we feel about these based on previous discussions. I also looked at some feedback from other regional partners. They're looking at a very different timeline, and it's really confusing to me because they're talking about 3 years and 5 years, and if you look at our capital assets list, there's just, we really need to be planning for the life of our assets. We have the Millbrook Marsh 40-year lease. That's our, right, so this, we talk about what we can contain in the CIP, that's a 5-year scope. We're talking about expanding that. This is a larger plan, 20 to 25 years. I am very comfortable with that time frame, 20 to 25 years. Others on a facilities plan such as that? I think you get a lot of support from our board on a planning document such as that. We would very much support some long-range planning and policy discussion. Note the CIP document was changed from a funding document to an expenditure-based future capital need document. So I just needed to just address this because we've been talking about this document and how it's, well, expenditure-driven and revenue-driven. So I want to just take a minute because here we're talking about it's expenditure-based, future need document. So I think the way we talk about our CIP is a planning document, but do you want to?
No, go ahead.
Okay. A planning document is, I think, how we use the language. So expenditure-based and a future capital need. I think future capital need document would be as close as to how we typically talk about our CIP and what I would expect of a CIP. The word expenditure-based, I'm just thinking of that as a need-driven document. Like, you all are proposing to us what you see as a need over the next 5 years. I like that. So do you want to clarify what your question is so we can answer it for you?
And I think this is larger if, Laura, you've received the Finance Committee agenda as well. So when we have done this, we've been growing up a facilities committee, had a facilities coordinator, now a facilities project manager started earlier this week. So there were facility condition assessments done to
Right.
basically say, this is the investment that we need to make into the facilities, you know, on benchmarked 2% or 5%, whatever it is, over every year for recurring maintenance back into the facilities to make sure we don't come to you in 25 years and say, oh yeah, we need a new furnace and a new air conditioning, HVAC
New roof.
system, and a new
Yeah.
roof, and a new
Mhm.
parking lot.
Mhm.
So it's about putting the money away on an annual basis, you know, for that capital reinvestment. That was not the policy at COG when I had gotten here. So we've done a good job over the past 10 to 12 years of putting a little bit of money each year, a little more away each year to get towards that. But with the completion of the facility condition assessments, we now have a better idea of what the need will be.
Thank you.
But we have not had and those facility condition assessments have been endorsed and approved by the facilities committee. But we have not come back to the finance committee and discussed, okay, well, while we've said these are needs and this is how we should be maintaining our facilities, there's a price tag associated with it. So we're trying to come back to this Thursday's finance committee meeting, which is actually a joint finance facilities committee
Right.
meeting, to have that larger discussion. Because I think that might even answer some of your questions
Probably.
going forward on the CIP in terms of the replacements and different things that we are doing, because it will be all based upon the needs as established under the facilities conditions assessments, plus replacement or addition of vehicles, which would go to the fleet management aspect that you were talking about earlier.
I just want to just also say that we want to make sure that we have similar deferred needs rates. So we have a lot of deferred needs in the township. We try to manage that all the time, and we just want to, our regional services and our municipal services to be on par with those kinds of things. And that's kind of a next level conversation, but I have a quick question to follow up here and we'll move on. So when you were talking about the facility condition assessments, were you referring to that long-range 20 to 25-year plan? Or were you also wrapping in my question about the expenditure-based future capital CIP document saying part of that strategy is that facility condition assessment documents being integrated into this? So basically, is this question, do we approve of the facility condition assessments being integrated in a proactive manner?
Well, I think you touched on all
All of
portions
it.
of it.
Okay.
Because with your looking at that, the facilities committee has said it's a priority, and there's a priority to take care of what we own. The facilities committee has reviewed the facilities condition assessments for a number of facilities, such as the fire stations, and have approved them. But you also have noted deferred maintenance occurring at the municipal levels. So we're just trying to get what we're doing, and what we're bringing forward on the same page as the elected officials and
Thanks.
individual municipal boards,
Thanks.
so that we are being consistent.
Okay, so we do support those things, but we take a cautionary stance when we talk about then how much we automatically moved to the funded moment.
This
Okay,
is a big
so-
discussion.
Okay, cool, okay, all right, great, thanks, let's move on then. COG compensation policy, COLA, okay, we're on the COLA item. The question is, HR committee recommended COG budget initially be developed with 5% COLA. There's a complicated explanation of why the COG COLA lags behind municipal cost of living adjustments. Is there dialogue? I have my opinion. Do we have questions? This is complicated. Questions? I'm going with the HR committee's recommendation is my comment on that. I don't know if others have other thoughts. Okay. This is, we have to say something. So in lieu of other thoughts, based on the information presented, with no other information currently understanding this topic, we are going with the HR committee recommendation. Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
I think so. I mean, I
Okay,
think it's
that's
a
our
good
comment.
compromise
That's our
between things
comment
we've
then.
talked about in the past with
Okay.
differentials between municipal
I
COLAs.
agree.
So I think
Yeah.
without getting into all that, I think they reached a good
I
compromise there.
thought so too. So I'm going with the recommendation. Okay. Next up, COG-wide classification and compensation study got underway in June. It's expected to be completed in fall of 2022. The timing of the study, it's planned that, oh, we're on to contingency. Okay, well, we'll go here and then bounce back. Okay. The timing, however, it's expected there may be some more urgent wage adjustments, because it's recommended that changes will be incorporated into 2024 budget otherwise. So our question, bouncing back, was why is the information about the classification compensation study under contingency budget? Is that just, like, I think we're regularly confused about the content of the program plan, I'm gonna be honest. In our reality, we have a CIP that has all that stuff in there, so we're trying to make sense of it, right? Fair enough.
So the contingency budget is for contingency, and it's not necessarily at the time tied to a specific COG program. So right now, what we're talking about in this particular question is
Gotcha.
that during the classification and compensation study that is just getting underway, we're anticipating that there may be a few unknown number of staff who, when the benchmarking is done and the wage survey is completed,
Right.
may be significantly under market where they should be compensated. We don't know if that would be somebody in one program or another, so
Gotcha.
we have a difficulty in assigning it to the right program at this
Understood.
point.
Thank
So
you.
Joe and I were just discussing this afternoon how we would move it from contingency to the right fund and back later on.
Okay, do we want to leave this comment? Thank you very much. Do we want to leave the comment, or do we want to strike it? I think we understand, or the question, okay. We can strike that question. And that's on, back on our guide. And then other question about contingency is, we request the reporting at the end of the year for the contingency fund expenditures and fund balances. It's just a repeat of the previous. Okay, moving on to COG building capital, and now I am on to our guide generated by the work session. So the first comment is, what is the cost to house new staff or equipment? It's under COG building capital. That comment, I just want to adjust a little bit and explain why it's under that section. That related to the acknowledgement that we have to buy some equipment and move some things around for new staff in administration. So it inspired us to comment that on the other staff requests, so like each staff request you'll subsequently see in here, the question then is, where are they gonna be housed, and then what is the, like, equipment need? So this question, what is the cost to house new staff or equipment, is under COG building capital, but it's applicable to all new staff. So we'll kind of ask that question. Does this new staff person mandate then additional renovations, and in what facility? But no question about this one, we understand this.
Okay, well, so as long as we understand the question, I think it is applicable to the other, there's only a few staff, but they're all pretty much in different Parks and Rec facilities or operations. Now at least we understand where that answer
Yeah.
goes. But typically, to answer the broad question, it would depend on the nature of the facility and the type of work. And, you know, does an employee need a laptop, or is this a maintenance person that is out in the field and will or will not need an office or a vehicle? So it would depend. There's not a simple answer for each,
Right.
but it would need to be identified by position.
Right, thank you for, that is actually what I did also mean. So when we get to those positions, we hope we remember to then refer back to this question. Okay, thank you. So then we'll jump to COG building capital budget on the other document. Note, consistent with the facilities, the FCA, which stands for Facility Condition Assessment, I'm gonna say it throughout this night. 25,000 is planned to be budgeted to complete repairs for exterior of COG building in 2023. So this is what we say noted on this. Opportunity for question. Is this a question? Do you just want us to make sure, like, we know that this is happening, or? Okay, great, thank you. And then next, should $15,000 be budgeted in 2023 to purchase replacement projector for general forum room? I said no on this.
I would concur.
Okay, there's 2 screen, it's a lot, we don't need that many screens, we have 1 screen. It just seems like, could we defer it? Like, I'm not saying like never ever buy it if maybe we need it, but could we defer it a year, is my thought.
Does it have to be a projector? I am noticing a lot of facilities now, especially smaller rooms, have changed up to just larger screen televisions, which I
Which is
think like
something
some of
we're
the largest ones are going for well under a couple $100 under $1,000 anymore.
Eric?
So the 2 projectors that are in the general forum room were purchased in 2014, so they've gone well past their useful life. And because of the size of the room and the fact that the ceiling has the large vault ceiling, we can't put the projectors closer to the wall like you can in this room. So the 2 projectors have to be set further back and have a special lens to be able to project on the wall far across the room. So some of you may remember that at some of the general forum meetings a couple of months ago, we started to see one of them turning the image purple or magenta, and the resolution has gone less crisp. So that one is in the process of being replaced. Again, they were just over 8 years ago, and they're past their useful life. So one is being replaced now. The other, we want to, rather than scraping through for contingency or savings elsewhere, plan for when the projector needs to be replaced next year, that we can replace the second one. So we're getting a jump on the second projector's replacement next year, as we anticipate it will fail because the other ones both were purchased at the same time in 2014.
The reason I was thinking no is because the attendance is so down, it seems like 1 screen is plenty. I mean, in person, but others clearly, could have other thoughts. This is just my initial thought.
Well, I would make one comment on the size of the screen, and that's in those meetings, there's often an image or, something shared on there. And so to look at a small screen would be really difficult. So I think
True.
a projector size is really necessary to see some of the information that's being
Yeah,
shared.
But
So.
we want, so that's
Yeah,
the
and-
question, do we need the second?
Well, the other question is because of the way the room is situated, if your back is to one, then yes, you need the other one. So the tables go around, and I guess
Yeah, I
with lower
do, but-
attendance, then maybe you seat people in a way that there's
Yeah.
nobody there, but.
I mean, it's not a huge cost, and we don't need to spend a huge amount of time on it. It's just like, we really are trying to defer costs that are unnecessary, and if contingency could cover it, if it does fail, bumping it out a year
Yeah, I mean, I think
isn't a
if
bad
one's,
strategy.
if one's being replaced now, then I wouldn't see why
Yeah.
you wouldn't hold on.
Just
the
trying to
other,
draw out a little bit without deferring it so far, it's a problem. Just consider bumping it a year if possible, or no, or we were ready to go for it.
Because that's replacing one, right? The other one's being replaced now.
Correct, so,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
just wanted to put the money in the budget to be ready to replace the other
Right.
one when it starts to fail.
I mean, it's good planning, and we talk about that all the time, understood, but again, there's also a balance between, do we really need it with low attendance? We talk about this with a red light too. So it's not, this
Because
is
the
not
way-
isolated incident
The
here.
way it reads is that it's going to be replaced in '23 regardless of its status. So if it's still
Oh.
working fine, like that's how that reads to me.
Yeah.
Right. Well, we are planning that, and certainly expecting that the one failed this year, and it took us 4 or 5 months to get the replacement, started failing. And so the second one, you know, we expect that it will take several months to order, get delivered, configured, those sorts of things, so we're.
Good point. If you do
and-
believe that we need two, this is a good approach.
I mean, I
This
think
is-
that we do need to.
Then we should
That's
go
what I
forward with it. Then it should
think,
be a
but
yes. If we think we need two,
I don't
then
know
it
if we
should be a
need
yes.
to replace the second one right now is what I'm saying, because
Okay.
we're getting one new one, the other one is still
Do
working.
you want to propose a deferral?
I mean, I would just change the wording, like as needed. So if the one was turning purple and you went ahead and ordered the replacement, then when
Okay.
problems are noticed with
And
the
a bridge
second.
with one is okay.
Sorry, I keep
We're-
leaning back.
We're saying a bridge of one is okay, even though we ultimately want two. We're okay with the lapse.
I mean, I would
If
think
one
it'd be a
fails.
few months, but
Yeah.
you know, that's,
Is this
but I'm also,
helpful?
yeah, it's not I think eventually it's gonna be spent,
We have
eventually it's gonna
5
be
people
needed,
here,
so.
so I'm really going
Yeah.
any direction on
I'm
this
saying
one.
yes. I'm saying yes.
Yes,
Go ahead and.
Jeremy? Replace now or as needed when it fails?
As needed.
As needed when it fails? Now. I have to be the tiebreaker. As needed when it fails.
I
As
mean, I'm
needed when it
fine
You're
either.
fails.
saying it's going to
Yeah.
fail, so I just
Yeah.
don't understand.
Yeah, it's just being
If it
ultra
fails, it's gonna be
proactive,
worse, it's
yeah.
gonna be something additional
Right.
maybe at that time.
I mean, I'm fine either way. I'm
Okay,
comfortable
I'm
either
just
way
gonna
it's gonna
vote
get
with you
spent,
guys
but-
to move us on because
Yeah.
it's a small item, really,
So
you
now,
know.
wait, so we're saying
Another
yes.
comment is we need more lead time because we really like to flush out the details and information. But that, I'll save that comment for later.
Right.
Okay. You've got a yes on the camera, or the projector, okay. Okay, then we're on to Office of
No.
no, COG,
Building capital.
yeah,
No.
we just did
Office
COG
of
Building
Administration.
Oh, right,
Capital.
Yeah, we finished.
One more COG Building Capital. LED lights should not exceed 2,700K, 2,700K. We've talked about this a lot as a board. The COG building is in Ferguson Township. The only reason our light ordinance doesn't currently say that is because we haven't gotten a chance to amend it. I did mention in some committee that I serve on that this is our full intention. I'm stating it now in front of the board. It's our full intention. So if you're just getting ahead of the game, believing in dark skies, trying to be proactive with flyways that we have adjacent to us, 2,700K is a very beneficial approach. So that's the nature of that comment. Okay. Insurance reserve fund budget. Could you elaborate on the employee changes and unbudgeted increases that were noted? And that might relate to your question then about the 80-10-10.
The employee changes are, when we budget, and especially in this year, when we budgeted person's health insurance, 79% of it went into the individual fund. So for planning, 79% of the cost went into the planning fund. 9% was borne on the employee, and 12% came from the insurance reserve fund, which is the accumulation of previous years' good claims back that we got back. So we got refunds back for good experience rates. So as we look into this, we're recommending it go back to 80-10-10, just based upon what we're seeing with when we got a refund from last year versus a year before. The other portion of it is the question related to employee changes, unbudgeted increases. If we budget based upon the current employee in the position, so if the employee changes over, goes, finds a different job, retires or whatnot, we had to bring somebody else new in. Well, if that employee had two-person and they're replaced with somebody with a family, we take that difference out of the insurance reserve fund
Gotcha.
rather than
Thanks.
charging that individual operating budget, because the operating budget is supposed to budget to a zero fund balance at the end of the year.
Thank you, understood. So we can strike, I think, do we agree we can strike our question? Okay, so let's strike our question there, under insurance reserve. And what is our answer then on the question posed by COG about the changing to the 80-10-10 split from 79-9-12? I say yes.
I think yes.
Yes, okay, you've got a yes. I apologize, I've had a call for a recess that I'm gonna voice, so there's been a call for a recess. We're gonna take a brief recess. 10 minutes has been requested.
Very good.
Apologize.
No problem.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks.
At most.
Ready to end the. Just making sure all our systems are go before I do the official end of it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and call us back to order. And we are moving through the COG CIP and program plan, and we are on to code administration. Okay, our comment, actually, I have a side comment. The comment is, please put park assets in Trazer. That really needs to get moved to Parks Capital, both Parks Capital budgets. So C21 and R15. So that comment, we could move that to those funds. Okay? All right, then the question, a couple questions. Follow along in the COG guide. Should $35,000 be budgeted in 2023 to purchase Bullseye digital fire extinguisher training system for use with existing structures, public fire and life safety training program? I'm gonna roll through with my answers. I said yes, but if people have questions or a differing opinion, they should say. Okay, should $15,000 be budgeted in 23 to purchase 10 iPads with cases and accessories for use in the field? I said yes.
Did you answer this question?
Did we do that? Yeah.
The first one under COG administration?
Oh, I'm
You skipped
sorry.
one, sorry.
Thank you.
Code administration.
Yep, okay, bumping back up, should $25,000 be budgeted in 23 to start converting new construction project documents to electronic format for larger facilities and the larger housing projects after it converts the existing structures data to electronic format? I said yes.
I said yes.
Okay. Now back down to the, should $20,000 be budgeted to purchase an electronic plan review table and associated software? I said yes.
So my question, is this something, I'm just not familiar with this.
Yeah.
Not that I'm super familiar with the other items, but this
Yeah.
one was just interesting. It's an electronic plan review table. So is this something that the municipal planners have as well,
That's a good
or?
question. Do municipal planners have this? It looks like Eric might be able to answer that, and if not, can we share it and et cetera, or the next few questions?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Is this-
Because I then see Trazer here and we're coordinating with that
Yeah,
use and everything.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the question.
So this would be for building plans, so I'm not sure if the municipal
Not
planners would
involvement.
No,
have the
okay.
same need.
You're right.
But the idea is that we have a lot of our design professionals that have been asking to be able to send their plans electronically, and this would facilitate electronic plan review
Okay.
at a large format size.
Building
And-
plans.
Mm.
This one then would also include, is Belfont Borough part of this? Right?
Code?
Yeah?
Correct. It would be for anyone submitting permits, plans for building
Yep.
plan review.
And they are a member of the code
Right.
Okay.
program.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Yep.
no, I was just thinking
Yep.
of funding and stuff, okay. Yeah.
Yep, yep, okay.
Thank you.
All right, so yes,
Yeah.
all right, so moving through then, that is it for Code Capital on this. Our question for Code Capital on our document, is the Ford Escape a hybrid electric vehicle, or is that, a gas vehicle?
Yes, we're starting to purchase at least plug-in hybrids or hybrid electric in some way. A lot depends on what Ford's making and delivering right now, but we did receive our first plug-in hybrid last week
Okay.
for the order for this year.
Okay, could we, maybe our comment then could be, we support the intention to purchase a hybrid electric vehicle for this item? Okay, great, that'll be our comment then, okay. All right, then we're moving on to SCLO. So we're on our document, and I did the research and I answered my question that I couldn't find the answer to, if the parking, system was in the CIP. It is, so we can strike that first question. It is, and it's in for $90,000 for 2023. So, that's good. Then our next comment was proposing a $15 an hour wage for library staff. So we understand that there was a study done and there was a comparison done with university staff for the library, but we are still independent of that, saying that we're interested in a minimum $15 hour wage for library staff. So if others, okay. Cross-agency position, so there was a suggestion that, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, just to go
Yeah,
back, that's
yeah.
not like 15 hours indefinite. Can we, like, are we saying 15 hours period, or do we need to say something more like, kind of going with we're putting a date like 2023, 2027? Because what $15 is right now might not be.
Okay.
You get what I mean? So I guess I'm trying to
Let's
figure out,
refine
like,
that
how do we
comment.
wanna-
To bringing current staff up to at least $15 an hour for this budget
Yes,
session,
yeah,
cycle,
exactly.
2023. That was a refining, okay, for the
Just
flow.
for clarification,
Yeah.
are you referring cog-wide or only for the library?
Well, this is about the
Yeah, this is
library
slower.
because there was
That was there.
something in that document that made us react to it. But we had an extended dialogue about what Parks was being paid, and I think we later asked a question about that. So I know that you all are not strangers to my trying to figure this out without feeling that, like, that data is right in front of me, that I could see it all. Because then we talked about, seasonal mowing staff. Our perception was they were getting very close to 15 an hour, if not 15 hour, whereas the library pages were getting like 11 an hour. So I think that was why we focused here. But do you have anything you want to share with us about that?
Well, so broadly, this is the reason we're doing the classification and compensation study right now, to make sure that all of our staff are paid appropriately and at the appropriate rate for the market, as well as for internal equity. The library director has recommended an increase for the pages this year as we work towards those two goals for all of the library staff when the study is completed. One of the problems, if we were to go too far in moving the pages up, is that they would be bumping up at the same rate as the staff above them, and so it creates some challenges. And that's why we are also looking at doing the study and trying to have all of the recommendations implemented at the same time, so that there's appropriate parity and equity at various levels, because you have the page, then you have library assistant, and then you have library technicians, and so on. So I encourage the board to provide their comments, and then we can get the reaction from
Sure.
the library director and HR officer. But I wanted to let you know that there are, one thing leads to another in terms
Yep.
of those issues.
Thank you for pointing that out. It's definitely something to think about. One of our things that, if I recall correctly, we discussed is talking about just trying to lift up the lowest paid in the organization. So I appreciate your discussion, totally relevant. You definitely want to be careful about those steps. Also then, I guess, our comment taken in context, just appreciate the idea of making sure we do continue to lift that, making sure that we're not keeping wages low because we don't want to raise somebody else's,
Lower-
right?
raise the-
Yeah.
the lower
So we appreciate the dialogue.
Right.
Clearly more to discuss.
And no disagreement with your goals and priorities.
I was
Very
gonna
good.
say, we
Yeah.
could maybe change our comment to say moving toward a base level of $15 an hour, and recognizing that the compensation study is moving forward. Because I think that was the genesis of the comment,
Yeah.
was that we saw in here, staffing
Right.
costs, pages $11 an hour. That was where that
Right.
came from. So
Right.
I think just establishing that as a comment, that we'd like to see that as a base
Right.
over the next, I don't know, we probably want to, like Tiara just said, add some parameters on that too.
but also the idea of like, you know, that consistency, because, you know, we do sometimes defer decisions until a study results will come in. But we want to make sure we then do that across the board. So there were other places that wages were being raised, particularly in parks. There's a notation about a continued difficulty to maintain staffing. I don't know, later we'll hear the page reference. And then them raising the wages. So in that case, there's not the same concern about bumping up above. So again, we just don't know enough of the details. And I think what we are thirsty for as a board is to really understand between each agency and COG, right? We want parity, but we don't know the details. So when we're looking at a seasonal mower getting paid up almost 15, and then we're looking at the library page getting bumped up to 11, you know, we just want to make sure that the logic is consistent, even though the context is different.
Right,
So-
and so historically, there has
Yeah.
not been a COG-wide view of this, and that's one reason we want to do the study
Yeah.
and to establish a structure for not only the full-time staff, which there is a pay plan and classification structure for full-time. We want that, it was one of the goals of doing the study, is to create that for part-time as well. The multi-year adjustment that you referenced, that you had read in the program plan, related to lifeguards. Several seasons ago, there was a problem recruiting and keeping lifeguards because of the pay gap, and teens and those typically applying for lifeguard positions were finding other jobs. This was, I think, 3 or 4 summers ago.
I remember that, yeah.
And so there was a multi-year agreement to bump up $1 more a year. And so that really was, I think, confined mostly to the lifeguard ranks. There wasn't the same kind of tiering as you see in the library, for example, that I described earlier.
Thank you.
So, again, we're going to look at this for the whole organization with this study, and I think we'll hit the goals that you're talking about.
Thank you very much. We will then go ahead and come back to that, that item, because I do definitely recall that concessions were mentioned. So we'll seed our knowledge then in that information about it being pool specific and whatnot. So when we get to that point, thank you very much, though, for your addressing all of our questions here. Did we mention then, I think we were just about to mention cross-agency position. SCLO had talked about communications coordination, and we had identified, like they had suggested maybe sharing a position in the COG agency. In the past, our board, previous iterations of this board have talked about the desire for communications for COG. Generally, I think it was through the pandemic and the emergency management. So we, I think, are supportive of the idea of an efficiency model of sharing a staff member where it makes sense in that case. And I wanted to see if we could include the one bar graph that we had referenced in this particular topic, which was the parks program participation from the Park and Recreation Comprehensive Plan, where it indicated that, I think it was the second highest reason why people didn't participate in programs was they didn't know about them. So I think that this idea of sharing the position, and maybe there is a need in parks. I don't know if the parks staffing study identified that need, but I'd be really interested I think our board would be interested in hearing more about if that need was identified for parks based on that data, and then would this be something that would fit here with SCLO? It seems like a very interesting outreach together kind of a thing. So staff, are you guys clear, and board, are you okay on including that table that came from the Parks Comp Plan?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. Sorry, I'm slowing down here a little. Okay, CRPA. So let's go to the COG first. In 2023, staff will produce a regular series of pop-up community surveys to help the agency test the validity of hot button issues in the This helps staff understand community opinions, inform how we draft recommendations for elected officials to consider. I did not understand what type of recommendations. I didn't really understand the nature of this. Did anybody else have any question about this question? Could we elaborate a little bit on it? And my question was, so do municipalities drive the questions? So like, we sometimes have planning questions. Could we say, how does this work? Do we say, we have this question, you have this surveying headspace carved out, could we use some of it to explore this thing? Yeah.
So I don't have off the top of my head some specific examples, but the way it was described in the program plan was that the surveys will help the agency test and the validity of key issues, hot button issues that might be popping up in the community, and help staff understand community opinions and inform how draft recommendations are prepared for elected officials to consider. So we already have for example, a SurveyMonkey account that we use for customer satisfaction, for code administration and inspectors and things like that. So we're trying to make good use of that account, and that was one of the suggestions from planning for that.
Might this be related to CAP, the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan behaviors that we're curious about?
Right. Well, certainly, I don't think there's an end to what those
Okay.
could be.
Okay.
Just a
All right.
limitation on what the staff may be able to handle.
Okay. I guess we would be interested in hearing a report then on what topics are generated for these surveys. We're just like interested in knowing.
That's my question, because I know
Yeah.
CRPA is stretched. I know they've got a lot of priorities forwarded from all the municipalities of, things to look at. And so I guess seeking more is interesting, but I love a survey. So I think if it's low cost and there's something specific they're trying to get, that makes sense to me. If it relates to the climate action plan, that makes sense to me. But if it's just seeking some undefined I'm just not clear on the purpose of it. So
We can get some examples.
yeah, I don't
for
want
you.
to say
That'd
no,
be great.
because I assume there's
Yeah.
some very clear specifics they want out of this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, we'd be interested, definitely. Thank you. Okay, and continuing with CRPA, our comments, staffing for workforce housing. So our comment, let's build that out a little. There was some expression of unknown staffing for this particular program. So I guess, could you explicate a little bit about that? We're really interested in the township and moving forward on that. That's one of those things where we do independent of COG, but COG also does, so we're trying to do the best, most efficient with that. So what does that sentence mean about staffing? I think it was staffing is undetermined at this time.
staffing commitment is not known at this time.
Staffing commitment is not known at this time. And would you all like our feedback on how important we think that is in terms of the work plan then?
Please elaborate in your comments, and that would
Okay.
really help.
Okay. So our comment would then be that we look forward to support and assistance that the region can give the township in achieving our mutual goals of affordable housing.
Yeah, and that specifically was referring back to the energy efficiencies program too, I think. So I think that's where CRPA isn't sure, because I think they're anticipating they're going to be managing that or,
Okay.
facilitating a lot of that. That's how I read that's what that staffing question.
I would have to double check with Jim, but because that paragraph is talking about the application for the ICLEI grant and some of the hope for,
Which
yeah,
is
the
that?
grant that we submitted a couple of weeks ago is for
Okay.
the $1 million grant
Yes.
in partnership with a number of housing agencies in the county. We're not sure exactly whether we'll get the grant or what the responsibilities will be of COG for that
Okay.
versus the lead agencies from the nonprofit community that were part of that. But we can certainly double check. If you include the question, we'll try and get you more information.
Okay,
Yeah, and I think I'd support a broader comment of, work to anticipate general affordable housing planning, staffing needs in the future, because I think that's not addressed yet in this, other than that line where they're saying they just
Okay.
don't know what's gonna be required, so I think
Mhm.
planning for that, and maybe next year's CIP would be helpful, because we'll have more information by then. So I would support a comment like that, just,
Okay.
I guess just broadening the comment we already have.
so I have a question so this is another one of those things like parks. So we're going down this road of having simultaneously agencies do it. But we are right now talking about making a comment supporting staffing.
No.
No, okay.
I'm saying assess it,
Okay, assess
yeah.
it, okay. All right, so assess
because there has
the
been.
role.
Because there has
that-
been somebody working on affordable housing
In an
at
unacknowledged manner.
CRP, yes, it's just part of their
Right.
work tasks that they've been doing. We had a study even before the current county study that was done, so I think we're
Right.
not attributing to those, I guess this is getting much deeper into that question,
Yeah.
but I think assessing the
Yeah.
staffing that's gonna be,
Right,
put toward this is the question.
okay. And later we'll talk about strategic planning, right? And this question relates to all the COG agencies. So in parks, right, we see a move from some core operations to some expansion, right? Without maybe some strategic planning around that. So we have the comprehensive plan that the authority is implementing, but we need to do some strategic planning around organization growth. And I think that's really hits what you're talking about with CRPA. Getting those job classification, all the job descriptions up to date, figuring out what structure we have and what we're actually doing, figuring out how we want to grow. And so in here somewhere, hopefully, we're going to be able to capture that in terms of, we have, what we would like to do some of this larger scale strategic organizational planning, and wonder if that strategic plan is an opportunity for that, because so far, it's not really gotten into the nuts and bolts that we've been talking about here. So, sorry, I'll bring us back around to this.
Yeah, assess,
Okay, so, affordable?
assess staffing needs for workforce housing, including ICLEI grant,
Okay,
because I think that's what they're talking about here, so
James, do you have that? So it's assess the staffing.
comment, use strategic plan update to inform
Yes,
planning of future staffing needs.
great, thank you, okay. And then the other comment for CRPA, that there was an item that wasn't completed in the Park and Recreation Open Space Plan that we've now also talked about here at our open space planning. But we immediately identified that it's really a regional map. It's really a regional amenity that we're looking for, as we previously stated in that RFP. So we added a comment, could we please include in the new comprehensive plan that CRPA is doing, a greenway and open space map that we can utilize to increase public participation in these wonderful amenities, and also go after grants that really rely on these kinds of connectivity factors as important factors in award. So my question on this is, can we please reinsert the example link? And the only reason I'm asking this is, it's for Knoxville and it's a different place, but for folks to really understand what this could be for our region, it's really important that we have a very easy clickable link. So can we reinsert that as a concrete example to the board? That was in that previous document. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that.
Okay, So staff, could we, sorry, James, James, could we please reinsert that link? Thank you so much. All right, moving on, I think we hit all of CRPA. Regional, we had in our document a separate CAAP section. That should go under CRPA, not separate. And our request was, could we make sure to include the park assets in the CAAP targets? Just one example, here in Ferguson, we have started to integrate electric mowers into our equipment, and obviously electric vehicles into our fleet. COG is a driver even now of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan. So we want to be able to look to the COG agencies to set that example. I see that in some other agencies starting, but this request is to include the park assets, and then I'd even go one further. Can we, maybe through the dashboard, talk about park fleet? Because when I looked at the dashboard, I didn't see park authority fleet. Anyway, that gets complicated. I didn't notice it, but can we add park authority fleet into the cap, into the dashboard? Or park fleet, thank you. Okay, CCMPO. What are the costs to COG for Act 537 special studies? We noticed something in the program plan where it talked about covering costs for Act 537 studies. Then we had some subsequent discussion about how we understood them to be covered, and we weren't sure what costs COG incurs. So we could just leave that as a question. You don't have to answer it tonight. Something to think. Okay. And then there was an item under CCMPO that was refer to parks formula change suggested. That can be stricken, I think, but the point is that many formulas utilize data like road miles or, do we need to take recess?
I think the temperature
Okay,
in the room.
yeah, I just am noticing that, I'm like, it's
Increasing.
getting very warm. Let's take a recess for, well, do we need a recess, or do you want to just adjust?
I can adjust.
Okay, all right, I'll continue, yes. We have a heating issue in the room for those not present, okay. Thank you. Okay, so,
My first meeting, I'm sweating
right.
bullets.
Yeah, it's not you, it's the, so, back to that comment, we're gonna strike it, but the information is that, you know, in our previous comment about considering that different parks formula that includes acreage, right, that provides an incentive for individuals to understand how our costs increase through additions, to be, right, and thinking about that, to reward individuals, or like if you're taking that as a municipality, there's an incentive to do that and you have less contribution. We're just showing here under CCMPO that many other formulas utilize data such as that, SCLO, CCMPO, CATA, et cetera. Okay. Okay, so next, did I skip something? Regional, hang on, sorry. Okay, Regional Fire Protection Program. We have a question. Sorry, I think our document doesn't follow in the exact same order. I'll go back to that. Okay, let me go with Regional Fire Protection Program capital budget, no, operating. No word operating. This goes back to those consistent fund names. Okay, it would be the operating, I think. If volunteer recruitment trends continue, 2 or 3 career personnel will likely need to be hired in 2023, including salary, benefits, employee-related expenses. Need will not become clear until August 2022. So question, like, where would they be housed? That would be a question. Yes, great, and where would they be housed? Then the capital budget, consistent with facilities committee assessment, facility condition assessment, 46,000 is planned to be budgeted to complete sidewalk rehabilitation. at the Borough Fire Station, okay. Consistent with the condition assessment, 25,000 is a plan to be budgeted for restriking block and brick at the Borough Fire Station, okay. The remaining building projects for 2023 are limited to planned maintenance in accordance with the current COG CIP and approved facility condition assessment. Thank you for that enumeration of those items. Okay, our comments on fire operating and fire capital. Under fire operating, can we contrast fire operating cost increases with park increases? This related to something that was in the program plan, and I heard it coming through public safety when I used to serve on public safety. Try to see if I can identify where it is, but there was, in the program plan, an item that really identified a concern about increasing costs of fire service. Here it is, page 11. Fire protection is likely to become more expensive, and right, so that is accurate. But we kind of look at all of the different agencies, and so when I'm reading that, I'm looking at then like the staffing and the capital that are proposed in the CIP and the program plan, and I'm seeing a lot more capital and a lot more staffing being proposed by parks. So if you look at fire staffing, I wish I could whip to the page right now. Here it is. Yeah. So if you look at fire staffing, it's red. So you can see one line there, it's red. If you look at park staffing, it's green. It's green, so you can see the large proportion. So again, well, okay, same over here. Red, fire, green parks. So I don't disagree that fire is increasing, but this comment relates to if we're concerned about fire increasing, isn't there, it seems like there's a lot bigger of a concern lurking that we're not stating about the cost of parks increasing. So that's what that, you find it under the fire, because its fire was drawn out as an item on program page 11. But it relates to COG-wide agency thoughts and placing some concern on the parks, or helping us with some data to understand why that was drawn out and then the parks wasn't. If that makes sense. Okay,
Eric,
yeah.
I wanted to comment.
Oh, did you want to now? You're welcome to, but.
Not in terms of the data, but just a quick comment
Yeah.
as to the reason the fire item was highlighted in the transmittal memo is because one of the things will drive the need to hire is the decline in volunteerism in terms of firefighters. So one of the things that if you're considering broadly the difference between the two sets of staffing needs that have been identified or opportunities for adding staff. Fire is because we have the obligations and we may have a continued decline in number of volunteers and thus the number of firefighters and that sort of thing. Whereas the study that was completed for Parks, Recreation, and Open Space a couple of years ago identified programming needs and some shortfalls in availability of programming and some maintenance needs and some other things. So those are additions to the programs to be offered as well as the addition of services. And so that, I think they're different policy related questions and you know, that's why it's important to have these conversations.
Thank you.
But I wanted to draw the comparison.
Thanks. What I'm hearing is it's more about maintaining core services with fire, and it's more about expansion with parks. So if we want to be careful about our growth, that we look to parks and we make sure that we prioritize fire, because it's going to be people aren't responding to fires versus there's not enough soccer camps or something. That's what I'm hearing as an elected official, but we'll definitely explore that more through this comment. Thank you so much. Okay, fire operating, fire capital. This also relates to parks. We really liked that fleet table that fire capital explicated, and what that title was, total cost of replacement. There may be this existing document, it just wasn't in this, program plan. We liked that explication in the fire capital. Could we have the same for parks capital? Thank you. Okay, now I've reversed course, and I am now utilizing the COG document as the guide, because this is the only way I can be sure we're not skipping anything. Okay, we got Park and Recreation operating budget, is where I am at, on the COG document. So we're gonna start with their questions. I'm sorry, no, we're gonna go back to our document for that. Okay, so our document, and the reason is because I think there's overlap. Parks operating. First item, information conflicts with concession truck feasibility study presentation. Okay, so this is where that, so it wasn't under aquatics. So under parks operating, in the program plan, I just am gonna read it because I don't have a page number, I apologize. Due to continued challenges in hiring seasonal maintenance staff, program leaders, and concession staff, the agency will be continuing to increase hourly rates to remain competitive with our fellow employers in the region. So the comment that information conflicts with what I was recalling when the question was posed about the staffing of the concession truck. What I remembered was that all those staffing issues had been resolved with previous bump ups, and now there were no staffing issues when we were considering the concession truck. But then in the program plan, they are using staffing, staffing issues are requiring to continue increase hourly rates to remain competitive. So it, not necessarily tonight, but we're looking maybe for some understanding of that inconsistency. Next, our comment is put comprehensive, so there was a bit of an error in understanding of this comment, so I'm going to explicate. The comment says put comprehensive study and CIP before staffing hires. This is actually develop the multi-year plan that's indicated in the program plan for program operations before the staffing hires. So there's 36 to 38. I counted one table, it said one, anyway, 36 to 38 staff hire requests for parks over 5 years. That's, as you can see in that document, it's really a lot higher than any other COG agency and definitely higher than here in the township. So there was a mention that we thought was a great idea of a plan to, here it is, the agency using results from the comprehensive study and ongoing program evaluations will develop a multi-year plan for program operations, including leagues, fitness classes, swim lessons, etc. And so if you're developing that plan, that vision, and then you're hiring the staff to go underneath it, I think, and or report back maybe what has already been done in that staffing study that I was not seeing in there, that would then relate to what work's already been done to drive those requests. So the comment, to recap, please develop the multi-year plan for program operations prior to the staffing hires and utilize it to drive those staffing hires' priorities. So next up is another priority. We're gonna stall out a little bit here, I think, because we're gonna talk about some prioritization, but then we should pick up again. So we talked about, I'm just gonna list a bunch of things right now, and then we're gonna talk about priorities a little bit, and then figure out our exact comment. So I have page 10. I don't know if that's, oh, it's page 10 in my document. I'm not sure what it is in the program plan, but there's a place that says things like, the viability of the Nittany Mall as the home of the Center Region Active Adult Center as one of the items that, wait, I'm sorry, let me start over. Addressing facility needs was a major issue that was considered in the Center Region Park and Rec Open Space Comprehensive Study, including inadequacy of indoor recreation space for agency program and classes, long-term need for a maintenance facility, viability of the Nittany Mall as the home for the Center Region Active Adult Center, providing permanent office space for the agency since the current lease at Sandy Drive is a short-term solution for space needs. And a priority of the Capital Committee is to identify and evaluate options for Phase 2 improvement of the regional parks. 3 of the more immediate needs are constructing restroom at John Hess, parking lot issues, pavilions and playground at Oak Hall, and master plans, and there may be an opportunity to review all master plans for Phase 2 development. That's a lot. So, indoor recreation space, parking lot, Hess restrooms, office space, review of master plans, maintenance facility, mall as an option for active adult center, office space, that's a repeat, Hess restrooms. Okay, so I think that was all of it. The majority of these items aren't in the CIP, even though they're identified as concerns. I know we're working on our concept of the CIP and how we're gonna utilize it. The way this board would probably deal with those looming needs that we know are gonna be coming is we would likely pop it into year 5 of the CIP. Okay? So, just so we know it's on our radar and then we start moving it closer to us, we know that there's gonna be a capital investment coming. So, right, you're gonna either pop it in 5-year or we have a list of other things. So, but what we're looking at here is we would like some prioritization of these things that we just talked about and expectations of when we can see them coming, I think. Because to just say them in the program plan, we need to take the next step and get them into numbers. Joe, please, thank you so much.
What you just communicated about is at least my personal vision of the long-range facilities plan.
Okay. I think it would be helpful for other municipalities to understand that you just said, that list of items, those needs are the kinds of things driving that. And I think maybe they would see that 3 to 5 years isn't going to be enough for assets in the multi-millions of dollars. Thanks.
And I'd just like to double down on what I just clarified. That is my vision. That's not necessarily COG's vision. That's not necessarily any of the boards or elected officials' visions. That's my vision.
I love that vision. It's a great vision. So, okay. So our comment is that, we would like to see these in planning documents with numbers. I don't know, the CIP, I'm going to use the CIP for now because we don't have the other thing yet, right? The program plan isn't enough when we have these so solidly identified needs. It's got to start to be in writing in the capital investment, because what you'll then see is you won't see that sharp decline like this any longer, right? You'll see boop, 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 in your 23 to 27, right? You might even see this, and then we start to talk about how we can flatten that line and do longer term planning. So, okay, enough on that. All right. Service areas for park amenities and also maintenance. I think we've heard a lot of discussion about how there's been some emerging knowledge about how it actually, because of the level that we've grown through in parks maintenance and dispersion, that now it's actually becoming more efficient to look at like a quadrangle or a sector in terms of maintenance. So, and amongst there is a document that is talked about level of service. Actually, level of service techniques analysis for today. This is about amenities planning. This would be great for amenities planning, but also for maintenance. So taking this, I did a little research into Tracer, which is compatible with some GIS functions, right? So we actually really could probably begin to utilize Tracer to plan out really efficient maintenance routes utilizing the GIS function, and then be able to use that data to drive the best location for the equipment stations. And that is why that was what drive our other comment that is compatible then, right? C20, C21, R15, getting that equipment separated out into regional and municipal, identifying the location of storage, because then you've got your GIS where your folks are going, you know where your assets are. So our comment, right, is service area analysis for park amenities and maintenance. So that was the explication of that. Okay. Include COG and municipalities in the Center Region Park and Recreation Open Space Comprehensive Study Action Plan. We have asked the authority, I guess, even though we funded the study, we've asked them to do all the implementation, but we failed to discuss how that implementation, a lot of it lies in the municipal hands. We haven't worked out the strategy that we're gonna use to complete that, because later you'll see that one of the comments that we're asked to react to is, should we finish all of these things, including the implementation of the comp plan, before we do these other things? Our comment's gonna be that the implementation of that comprehensive plan, it is going to take many, many, many years. You know, things like every municipal park sign will be replaced with a sign that is consistent with all other signs. So my feedback at that time, when that was going into that plan, was we don't typically replace signs until they need to be replaced, like the projector. So for us to predicate any other project on finishing all of the comp plan effort, it's not really realistic. So let's have a realistic conversation about what partners are at the table implementing what parts of that comp study before we move on to other things. Okay. Provide income report for tournaments, program participation numbers by municipality, programs delivered by municipality, and reporting for Rec on the Go. These are just things we want to keep in touch with, that we funded, that, so for example, Rec on the Go, we thought that it would be kind of a free program, but maybe now it's a rental, and so we're just, like, give us an up-to-date report on how things have changed or not changed in regard to these things. Okay, those are all our comments. I'm going to flip back to the COG document now for parks operating. Oh, I'm sorry, they have staffing. So I'm going to leave the staffing until later when we talk about staffing. So the only other thing under parks operating that isn't staffing is note in 2023, staff will continue to pursue the mobile concession project. We asked in another area in the capital budget, we'd asked that to be deferred. And I think probably staffing reasons, prioritization. There's a lot of new things that are being taken on. Let's prioritize some of them and think about that. Okay, so.
Sorry, where are you on that?
Okay, right, so.
On the COG.
On the
On
COG.
page 6?
On the COG, and I am on page 7. I skipped page 6 because I'm coming back to that under staffing, all at the end, where there's
Okay.
a separate staffing area. Okay, so this is the top of page 7.
Okay.
Okay, so we could comment in both locations. Let's comment here. Our preference is to defer that a year and have more dialogue about it. Okay. Okay, so let's go on to Parks capital budget. Back to our comments. So indoor facility, is this about rental or capital investment? So talk about the indoor recreation feasibility study that's proposed for next year. First, we have a question, and then we have some thoughts. So the question is, we were under some different impressions. I was under the impression that it related to the comprehensive plan, need for indoor facility recreation space, and that the thought behind it was that we would be building. Then there was some discussion about, maybe it's about rentals. So our question is this feasibility study, my experience is for feasibility studies typically are for capital investment thoughts. But is it for rental feasibility or is it for capital investment feasibility?
This would be for the long-term capital investment for an indoor recreation facility.
Okay.
I think it's to update needs from the community based on the plan that had been identified some years ago when the indoor recreation facility was identified for Whitehall Road Regional Park. I think there was
The park maintenance facility was identified for Whitehall, but there was a tennis building for,
I think there was also some conversation about it, but anyway, it's for a longer term
okay.
feasibility.
For capital
Correct.
investment, okay. Okay, so we'll get back to the priorities discussion then, now that we have the answer to that. So we can strike that question and let's add the comment that, okay, so let's explore a comment, try to be quick about it, but it's a lot of money here, so I don't wanna gloss over this. Okay, so first I wanna just take a minute and talk about feasibility studies in my experience and then what I saw in the COG CIP. So last year in the COG CIP, it talked about a feasibility study for the service building at Millbrook Marsh. And at the time in the narrative, it talked about replacement with a prefab. And the study amount was $20,000. And so in that budget, in that capital plan, there was $20,000, and then the next year in 2023 at the time, because it was 2022 then, there was $0. This year, then after that $20,000, what came into that spot where there was a 0 before is over $1 million, driven by the feasibility study. I remember at the time requesting that we put a placeholder in there because there was going to be a cost associated with a feasibility study. Feasibility studies have shelf life. So we have not pursued an additional feasibility study for our fire station here in Ferguson because we're not ready to move on the capital investment. So until we're ready to move on the capital investment, we're not going to do a feasibility study because it's got a shelf life and it'll expire before we're ready to do the investment. So we line those things up. So when I see feasibility study for an indoor recreation center, and I know that that is going to be in the many millions of dollars, baseline, many millions of dollars. I've done, like, you can look at Derry Township, they just built one, you can see the cost. Couple comments on this. We're not ready for that. Let's talk about our priorities and all of the major facilities investment we're doing. Let's get our staff up to where they need to be paid. Let's do our planning for our programs. Let's do our planning for our master facilities planning. Then let's talk about indoor feasibility, recreation feasibility study, because although people did indicate that as a need, there's many other places in that comp plan that indicated that they're very happy with the current amenities. So let's explore it a little more. Let's defer that. If folks are going to neglect to defer that and insist on moving forward, then we're going to ask that a $3 million to $5 million placeholder be put in year 2, because that's exactly the pattern that we saw with Millbrook Marsh service building. $20,000 feasibility study with 0 at the next year. Now it's $1 million. So that's a lot in that statement. So let's bring it back around. Indoor facility feasibility study. Please defer this and utilize this in the long-term facility planning and be prepared for the shelf life of the feasibility study and the willingness to invest the capital, or it won't be money well spent. Okay?
I guess in the interim, and it's probably more of a facilities or park
Please.
committee question, is have all of the rentable indoor space accommodations been exhausted? Have all of those been
Yes.
used, and they're all, yes, so
Yes.
that was an
Yes.
aside, if we can rent a place
In the
now
meantime,
to
strategizing.
accommodate
Yes.
in the meantime.
We're not opposed, but let's go a little bit more
Mhm.
cautiously. Yes, good, very good, okay. Parks Capital continuing, this is where we want our additional concession vehicle. We also would like to defer that, staffing, planning, right? Our interest would be to defer. And then, John Deere Gator for 2-deck. I don't remember if this is in 23 or 24, but we want to defer that purchase because we're interested in working together as a municipality that invests the capital investment to consider doing like a charging station and getting an electric compatible with this purpose. So could we defer that and do some research there to meet the CAP goals and our own goals and everybody's goals? And again, use that planning document, those goals. Okay. There are 15 backups in the fleet management plan. Are more needed? Like, what about storage? Are all of these backups causing storage issues? Multiple places storage issues are mentioned. Pools, they're mentioned. Millbrook, it's mentioned. We're just kind of like trying to get some solutions there. And then in relation to that, it didn't make it into this list, I don't think, but there was a purchase, that there was some backup, there was like, okay. There were multiple backups, but we were going to get a new one. Okay. Yes, defer the 2024 purchase for the Toro 4500 242. There's a 2006 backup. This one is from 2013. So I think that if the narratives were in here, all of these questions and all of these thoughts probably would have been taken care of, but they weren't, so we kind of have to maybe just quickly hit on a few of these, okay? So then the robot painter, when was it first purchased? It's not in any of the fleet and equipment stuff, but it's coming back as a replacement on the CIP. So it must be existing if it's a replacement, not new, but then it's not. So could we include that on that, and could we know when it was first purchased? Then just questions about the skid steer. And this is just us trying to understand how we can best work together in parks operations. What do you use the skid steer for in the bucket? In the skid steer, is it parks maintenance, like trimming trees and that kind of thing, or are there other uses? Just, again, deferring the answer until, later. The Wreck on the Go vehicle, we see that it's gonna be replaced in 2027, I believe it is. It's not in the fleet management plan. So we were wondering, could you add it to the fleet management plan? And since we're planning on replacing it, could you note the year it's purchased, the price, and then we're interested in the investment. There was a significant investment to get it up to speed. So what we're trying to analyze here is return on investment before replacement. So if we could get that data, so we can evaluate then the replacement that's upcoming. Our next thing, R15C21, you'll see it again. We'll just leave it in there. To maintain municipal responsibility for playgrounds and capital improvement. We just noted that in the program plan, there was just some dialogue, there was just some rhetoric about cooperating on playgrounds, and we support that cooperation, but we just wanted to state that we are still interested in doing our own capital investment in our municipal parks. So that's what that's about. Okay, that was Parks Capital there, so Parks Capital in the COG document. All right, for details about capital equipment that are planned in the CIP, see the detailed description in the program plan. Then question, should the following scheduled purchases be made in 2023 Parks Capital Equipment budget for a total of $309,000? The used concession vehicle, well, we said no on that one. The Toro 234, well, we had the question about that with the 2006 and the 2013, so we're not sure, I don't know how to answer that maybe yet. The other two, 3, 4, 5, 6, I would be interested in seeing a comment that says explore electric alternatives to all of these purchases. Just explore that, because that's what we're doing now with this CAP implementation. So that would be our comment. And then that is it for that in the COG. All right, then we are going to Regional Park Capital in our document. Again, same question about the C21 and the R15. Here's a question. Why does revenue from R15 field rentals go into C20, but house rental revenue goes into R15? So it's another budgetary question, really for Finance Committee, just coming from our board. Could you break out costs for driveway and parking lots as two separate items is our comment. I want to explicate on that a little bit. So I have always talked about this as one thing, driveway and parking lot. I have noticed that previous language in previous documents have talked about driveway and parking lot. Recent communications, it was indicated to me that I should only be talking about the parking lot, but in the narrative here, it says driveway and parking lot. So just trying to get a handle on, is it driveway and parking lot? Is it parking lot? And again, if it's both, could we get the numbers on installation, repairs, and any other data you have on both or whichever one it refers to? Irrigation requires more information. We were a little bit, I think we were looking for more information on this one, but our discussion was, can we just, this is a phase 1 purchase, so we would think we would be using the loan for this. So that was our comment. Okay. Artificial turf, there were some program plan comments in the 2015 program plan that stated that in the event that artificial turf would be installed, the Center Soccer Association would be responsible for certain operational costs related to it. So could we just refer to that historical data, just bring that into the future and see if that still stands? Last comment in this area from us was review of other plans need to occur before comp plan. So this, just to clarify, this relates to what I was talking about earlier. The way that the question was, the way it was presented in the program plan was we would need to finish implementing the comprehensive plan before we do anything else like review the master plans. This comment really should be something more like, it's likely that the master plans will need to be reviewed before the comprehensive plan is fully implemented based on the expansive nature of that document. Okay, so Regional Park Capital, sorry, I have to skip around here. Okay, Regional Park Capital from COG. Note, consistent with facility committee approval, FCA $45,000 will be budgeted in 2023 to assess the needs of the Oak Hall Regional parking lot and driveway. So that's where that, one of those parking lot and driveway, is it and driveway or is it parking lot or both? And then below it says engineering consultant demonstrating improvements to the parking lot and driveway. So is that accurate, parking lot and driveway, or is it just parking lot? I in the past have made this comment, I would, I don't know if board would support it, but that parking lot gets really bad gullies and ruts, very bad. It's heavily used in all kinds of weather. It does not seem, based on my experience here, and only my experience here, I've not ever come across a situation that resembles that gravel would be the recommended surface for that kind of lot. It would definitely be an asphalt recommendation or a constructed porous material that is like asphalt based, right, or constructed based, not the loose gravel. So I know it's in the master plan that it would be gravel, but I believe it's in the master plan, well, it is in the master plan at Whitehall that it would be gravel too. I take that back. I know it's in the master plan that it would be gravel, but I'm concerned that we're going to keep with the gravel because we're deferring that small amount more of capital costs to do asphalt. So can we consider doing asphalt, and do we need this consultant if we all concur that asphalt is the better option? Do we still need the same consultant, or would it be a different consultant that we would want to pay? So let's be efficient about it. Maybe the policy comes first and then the consultant comes second. Sorry, I'm losing my place. So that was under Regional Parks Capital, right? Where you were saying about, used to be just development, now we're seeing other costs that aren't development. They're still not equipment, but they are, okay. So next up, consistent with Facility Committee approval, FCA 32,750 will be budgeted in '23 to complete the fence replacement project for final two fields at Hess. Total cost was 42,570. Okay, thank you, noted. Thank you for the information. Moving on to pools. We were just confused about the pumps and the filters. If you try to track it from last year's CIP and the numbers that were in last year's CIP and then in this year's CIP, it was really hard to just determine what had been installed, what had not been installed. The parentheses of the 2 pumps for each kind of carried over, sort of making you think maybe the work wasn't done, but I think the work was done. So could you clarify for us the pumps, the filters, and the concrete work at both pools, what's been done and what's planned to be done? And can you reconcile the numbers for us? So if the number changed from one year to another, it could be based on a better estimate, it could be, could you help us understand? Again, I think the narrative would have been helpful in this, in answering that question. We're considering commenting to defer the Welsh storage component, again, till you're doing more of that facilities planning. So there's Welsh storage, that it's concessions that's being used as storage. How do these factors come together? So maybe if you told the electeds, oh, if you get this concession vehicle, we don't have to pay for storage. Or we, you know, like how do they relate together? Increased contingency for pumps, parts, and repairs. We thought about this, but then we weren't sure because we weren't sure what the data was based on the replacements.
It relates to the other
So it's all
comment.
of a piece there. Okay, so we have concerns about needing to close pools because we don't have them, but we couldn't really understand what we do and don't have. Okay, great. So that's pools for us. Now I'm going to bounce back to pools for COG. Okay, so right, so here's aquatics operating budget, or pools operating budget, or enterprise budget. So should the seasonal park specialist position that works at both the pools and Millbrook be extended from 7 to 10 months? Typically a 7-month position. Agency proposes to expand to a 10-month position. I believe that this is in the staffing study under 2023. Do we have any thoughts on that? I really did take an approach of wanting to defer a fair amount of the staffing until we could get that program planning document done. So I was interested in deferring it until that point. But what I'd really like is for us to have an opportunity to have that information and then to make a recommendation, as opposed to making a recommendation without that program planning information. So I guess here's what I would suggest as a comment. Our thoughts are to defer that until that program planning document is done. Initial
Yeah.
thought? Okay. 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 Aquatics capital budget. So consistent with this is COG document, consistent with Facilities Committee approved FCA, following purchases are planned for aquatics. Repair and replace concrete expansion joints at Welsh Pool, $20,000. I think that used to be like $100,000, like that's what I mean about, could you help us understand those numbers? Couldn't follow it in the CIP. Then there's so this is just noting, continue the pool pump replacements at both pools for 4 new pumps. So it said that last year too, right? So do you, like, it's not really updated, like, if it said that and then progress, 2 done, 1, right? Okay, so we'd like some information. Continue the storage addition project. Again, referring back to kind of, can you help us better understand all of these different storage needs in a longer term visionary manner? Like, is it the case that we'll be always using this distributed system, or is it the case that this centralized maintenance facility is gonna house COG staff? These drive answers to these questions about expansion that we just don't have the data for. Investigate upgrades to the play feature at Welsh at an approximate cost of $20,000. This is something that I think there's a lot of lovely features at that pool, and this would be something I would defer.
That was my question, so this is upgrades, so I assume it's not any type of safety replacement of equipment, and so I'm just always concerned about the cost of the pools, about entrance fees, and so, so I guess this is about like the jungle gym feature at that end, you know, and, you know, you're there for a few years and you move on, new people come in and use it, so it's new to them. So I don't want there to be a safety concern, but, you know, I don't know, it's just a different
So
philosophy.
unless there's a safety concern, can we defer this purchase?
I would.
Okay.
That would be my.
Again, trying to flatten out that line.
Yeah. Remember,
Remember, the parks capital in year 1, I'm sorry, my shoulder bothers me, right? It's like year 1 is up here, year 5 is down here, we're trying to do this right here. Right?
But again, that's how I'm reading that, so I'm just
Yeah.
saying upgrades, so if
Yeah.
there's something different about that, then
Definitely not.
that help
we don't wanna stop the
contextualize.
Safety.
Absolutely, so it needs to
Yeah.
be,
Mhm.
yes.
Yep, and then replace the internal filter components at Park Forest. Again, I think that was a very high number before, and now it's 20,000. So can we help understand that a little better? Continue annual 10,000 contingency as referred to before. We'd just be interested in the end of the year report for that. Okay, so we are on to Nature Center. Let's go back to our document. No, I'm sorry. Let's continue with their document. Active Adult Center operating budget. Should the staff assistance hours return to original 20 hours per week in 2023? My question was, has attendance returned to normal at that center? That's what I would utilize as my guide. And I'm getting head nods up here. So we would support this if the numbers show that attendance at that center have recovered to that point when that assistant was working at before. Otherwise, let's defer that as well until we get those numbers up a little bit more. Should a full-time program coordinator for the center be hired in 2023 as recommended? It was recommended in the staffing study. It was recommended for 2023. Thoughts? full-time program coordinator. I think the reason why sometimes we're stumped on how to answer these things is, again, we were not involved in the strategic planning that is resulting in the tripling, or I don't know, quadrupling of the park's size. So we have no frame of reference with which to answer these questions. So it's, if we could, you know, resolve that, it would be helpful. But, so program coordination, so they're gonna assist the supervisor in growing programs and supporting special events. It's a crucial position. Okay, here it is, that its center is beginning to return to high level attendance, so it's beginning to return to that. So we still are interested in some concrete numbers on that, because it is beginning to return. But do we want to also say this is, like, that's helpful information to know. If we're seeing it really back to normal numbers, we would support both these positions. If it's not back to normal numbers, we're asking to defer for a year.
Right, because
Okay.
is it back to normal numbers or exceeding them? And is this an additional position on top of what was there pre-pandemic?
Oh, that's a
I
good
guess.
question.
So,
Is this a new position that never was at the center before? Brand new?
Program coordinator would be new.
Okay,
so I guess I would say defer then is,
until we get those that bigger plan and
Right.
some facilities planning.
Right,
Okay,
And the numbers up, because even the full-time sort of,
okay,
you know,
okay.
is it really warrant a full-time?
Okay, okay, so on the first question, should the staff assistant hours return to normal? We're saying, are we up to 100% of normal numbers? If so, we support that. If not, defer. On the other position, the new position, we are saying
I would say
defer.
defer.
Defer 1 year. Okay, thank you. Next, should the seasonal parks, oops, okay, I missed that topic. Back to our comments on Active Adult Center. Oh, there was information about programming happening in some of the municipal parks from the Adult Center. We really supported that idea. We think it's a great idea. Could we get reporting on that? So we would be interested to know where those programs are held and then the participation. We know Active Adult Center, it does use some of the participation numbers, so we'd be interested in knowing how this affects that or doesn't. Okay. Millbrook Marsh Nature Center operating, back to the COG document. Okay, we've got, well, I deferred some other staff and not this staff, oh boy, okay. So, all right, so we've got staff. Should the seasonal park specialist position that works at both pools as well as Millbrook Marsh Nature Center be extended from 7 to 10 months?
Sorry, what page are you on here?
I am on page
6?
number 10 of
10?
the COG generated document. I believe that we deferred this until we have more of that programming information. The same question was asked before, but in the other budget. So our preference would be to defer. I think it's a repeat from the pool. Okay, full-time facility rental coordinator, should it be hired as recommended in the 2022 staffing study?
The facility rental coordinator. I
Millbrook.
think if the revenue is going to cancel out the expenditure, then yes, but I don't have any sense of the, of the balance there, so. So I guess I would say no.
Okay.
Because I don't have the context, but,
Okay.
you know, if it's anticipated that this person would be out there, you know, outreach and, you know, marketing and getting this thing, you know, all their facilities rented, and that would pay for the salary. If that's the intention, then sure.
Yes, so do we think that revenue, the additional revenue is going to
Will compensate for that
compensate this
employee.
salary? Could we ask that question as a question? Yeah, of all of, I think that the opportunity for revenue at Millbrook is a real opportunity. We've seen it. I looked at the numbers. I'm not gonna quote them now because I forget them, but it's, but I would be interested in the future of us exploring ways that we can, you know, really target revenue increases and understanding which the pools, Millbrook, facilities rentals, how we can work together on that.
Because this position would be devoted to that. So if
Yeah.
it was, you know, an additional staff person that's helping around the entire facility, it would be different, but because it would be solely devoted to that one
Yeah.
task, then that's why I raised the question.
Does Millbrook Marsh already have a grant writer on staff? Okay,
No.
do any parks subgroups have a grant writer on staff?
Only the library.
Okay, that's, okay.
Okay.
All right, so, sorry, you guys, I'm gonna bounce back to the other staff, because we went on a trajectory here, and we're talking about staff, but,
Well,
so
I'm
let's
sorry,
finish up this quote. Okay, so the question is, page 10, COG document, should a full-time facility rental coordinator be hired as recommended in the 2022 staffing study for Millbrook Marsh? So, right now, where we're at is that if their salary is covered by the increased facilities rental, which sent me on a question of, that is typically seen in grant writing. And I wonder if the
okay.
potential,
Right.
I'd like to look at the staffing study. If I had all the time in the world, I'd be consulting it right now, because I'm curious as to whether a grant writer was recommended by the consultants for parks, because,
And I
Yeah.
sort of, on this one too, I also, specifically for Millbrook Marsh, I don't know, with the boardwalk replacement and everything going on, do you know that, like, is it something that you want to defer? Like, are you going to really attract people there when Millbrook Marsh is going to be all torn up, et cetera?
right.
Right, and they're still completing the other building, and, yeah, so maybe it would make
Okay.
sense regardless to defer
Okay.
that for at least a
Okay.
year.
I think we definitely
Okay.
have, okay, so we like the idea of this position, but defer based on all of the projects that are going on and the question of rentals at this time. Okay.
Yep.
We are now gonna bounce back, staying within parks, but we're gonna bounce back to the two staffing positions that are on page 6 of the COG document. Okay, and it's the summer camp and program coordinator and the natural resources supervisor. Okay, so we're just gonna move on. The staffing, so, both of these positions were recommended for 2023 in the staffing study. Summer camp and program coordinator. So I generally am supportive of this position, but I am predicating it on something that's really important to us as a municipality, and I'm not sure it's been heard yet, which is, you know, we're now gonna support a full-time summer camp and program coordinator position. We want the numbers for participation. And we want it, we would like them to be useful numbers. So the report that was generated about facility rental was very useful for the most part, extremely useful. But one item kind of stood out about how the data is organized. It appears that all facility rentals were initiated from College Township except for one, or something like that. So if you think about that, if you think we're somewhat homogeneous across the region, right, that's a data collection issue, because that is clearly not representative, right? There's absolutely across the region others that are participating in that. So what changes need to happen to that data collection to give us the data that we need to support positions like this? So I think we tentatively support it, but I'm not sure, because I haven't heard that yet. But my support is 100% predicated on the guarantee that this will result in useful data for municipalities. Thoughts?
My comment was more based in the narrative that and I guess this is on page 83 of the program plan, where it goes into that this position will also help the agency remain competitive as we continue to expand our program offerings. And I think it's, I guess, again, a prioritization question. You know, what is the Parks and Rec Department competing with? You know, is it private companies that are offering things that they're trying to compete with? I always think of Parks and Rec as supplemental and additional to fill needs and, you know, gaps in offerings. And so that wasn't in the questionnaire to municipalities, so I'm not sure why. But so I guess, are we expanding to compete with other existing programs, or expanding to capture some of the participants in private programs? So I was really unclear about that. I'm not opposed to the position, but I guess that just made me wonder about the need for it. But
Yes.
I mean, I'm not, if there is a
No, you are reminding me that in our previous discussion about this, we utilized some data from the comprehensive plan that said that individuals are happy with program offerings. And I'm trying to find that in this document right now.
yeah, I mean, again, that's
It was like
why,
number 2, you said.
What's
right?
that?
It was like the number 2.
I think that might have been, well, that was, I think, recycling.
and that's why I couched it in a, you know, it's just another prioritization question, because if we're looking to expand to compete with other things that are already being offered, that kind of goes against the things that we heard in the survey about taking care of what we have. That was the main
Yes.
priority. And
Yes.
so if it's a need, I mean, if we need to have this person there to actually make the programs happen in 2023, I certainly don't want to
Right.
not have that
Or
there. But I was just
to-
kind of unclear about,
Or to
what
really
they're
give the
doing.
municipalities what they're looking for in this program implementation through information as being part of that. So I found it. It's from the comp plan. How would you rate the availability of CRPR programs for the listed groups? And what is your overall level of satisfaction with quality of CRPR recreation activities? So like a lot of satisfied and very satisfied on that. And then the availability of the programs for the listed groups. So overall availability of programs, I wish you could see this. The bar on the right amount, it's like all of this is the right amount. The right amount, and this tiny little amount is not enough or not nearly enough. So if you refer to this, could we add this table or this bar graph back into the comment guide under this position? Because you're bringing up the question of, is this a core service or are we expanding? We have data here that says people are satisfied. Okay, so that would be our comment then, okay? Is this core or expanding? We have this table that says people are satisfied with programs. If it's core, can part of that be making sure that this data can get to the municipalities, given this new position, right?
well, and in here, it says that, you know, the demand and potential to expand summer camps, events will generate net revenue to support this position. So that puts this one in a category of its own, because other positions aren't funded that way. So is that actually intentional? I
Right.
don't think so. But then why aren't other positions doing that? So again, if it's a need for next year, then I don't want that to go unmet.
Okay. Good on the comments or
Looking for
questions?
I would be a little bit cautious when expanding programming, because we're definitely not the only player in town
Okay.
when it comes to a summer camp that any child or family can participate in.
Okay. Okay, all right, so then let's move on to Natural Resources Supervisor. That's the second one on page 6 of the COG document. Should a full-time Natural Resources Supervisor be hired for Park Operation Division? in 2023 as recommended in staffing study, was recommended for 2023. I'm going to pull out a passage here. It says, this position will help to build communication and complete project work for not only the regional parks, but also municipal-owned parks as well. So in terms of the municipal parks, one thing that we did in our previous discussion was talk about the comprehensive plan, not in terms of municipal parks, in terms of parks. We talked about the comprehensive plan and like what a natural resources supervisor would do based on the results. So one bar graph is, which of the following environmental practices should the center region promote and select all that apply was the question. The answers are riparian buffer, lower no-mow areas, alternative energy sources, invasive species management, habitat management, composting, green stormwater infrastructure, tree preservation, and recycling. So the natural resources, a lot of these items are squarely in the responsibility of the municipalities. So when I was thinking about this particular position, I was thinking of deferring until the work of the Parks Governance Committee is more complete, because this is one of the positions that I think is in flux based on the results of that committee's work. Especially when you look at some of the targets, right, that folks are looking at here. So let's work together to evolve whose responsibility that is and how it's manifested and how we work together. But I think what we're saying here in total is to defer this until that's worked out. Okay. All right, so now we're done with the staff for park operations. We are popping back to Millbrook Marsh Nature Center operating budget. We talked about facility rental coordinator. So we're now Millbrook Marsh Nature Center capital budget. Okay, so note, at this time, the Part 2 feasibility study is underway and updates will be provided regarding option 3 plus alternatives. Study will provide answers to whether the boardwalk can be built as designed in option 3, whether the new trail connector can be located where designated, and any additional variables that could affect the project noted in the Part 1 feasibility study. Okay. Thank you for that information. We had a fair amount of questions about this project when we talked about it in our work session. So in attendance at the Park Authority, we've heard a lot about the scope of the project and how it's changed over time. So there was a dangerous situation, the boardwalk's collapsing. We need to address that. And then there's, also wouldn't it be great to connect some things? And wouldn't it be great to upgrade this? And how about let's add another trail? So I think what we would like, I don't know, I'm shooting in the dark here. I think what we would like is a presentation to the board about this project and the options to help us really just understand what we're going to be deciding. And based on our other conversations, like this is a free amenity in terms of like anybody, you don't have to pay for a program, you can go and you can enjoy it. So generally we're prioritizing this amenity. But we see a lot of, I'm going to call it mission creep within that. So what is the core part that we need to fix? And then what are all the accoutrements that we're considering and why? And how can that introduce a return on investment that would help offset this free amenity for everyone? Other things on the boardwalk?
I think that was it.
Okay.
That's good.
I remember what it was. In the last year and this year's CIP, hang on. It appears that if you draw a line, if you compare last year and this year's CIP for Millbrook Marsh capital investment, the numbers look approximately the same, but they represent different amenities. So last year, the number in the 3-point-something millions represented just the boardwalk. Now the boardwalk has been split into 2 years, but the 3-point-something million is the same for this year, and we've added in the service building for $1 million. So the question is, like, what is the nature of that split of funds? Does it correspond to options for the Millbrook Marsh Boardwalk? Or were we trying to flatten, or am I misremembering? Yeah, it looks like, Joe, you might have a thought on that. I'm gonna try to find it in my documents.
I'm not going to be 100% sure, but do want to speak on the expenditures. We did have funds put aside, and I think it was $3.5 million, if I remember correctly, for the Spring Creek Education Building and the Welcome Pavilion. And then I think the boardwalk was in there as well for a later time. We were still trying to get a cost. That was fairly early on. And then there was the service building as well. So I think there might be something in there in terms of the Welcome Pavilion and the Spring Creek, Phase 2 of the Spring Creek Education Building you might be thinking of in terms of last year's versus this year's CIP. I can't say anything more than
I
that.
should clarify my comment. Last year's CIP for 2023, and I've got it in front of me now. So last year's CIP 22 to 26 said for 2023, boardwalk replacement would be 2.9 million and construct phase 2 of education building 742,000, resulting in 3.6 million and some change. This year's CIP for Millbrook Marsh 2023. Let me get there. Hang on.
3.5, I think.
Yeah, I'm trying to. That's 24. Okay, no wonder that's confusing. Thank you. Yes. Okay. Thank you. 3.5. Okay, so here's what I'm trying to say. Last year's CIP for 2023 was 3.6 million, included 2.9 for boardwalk replacement and 742 for phase 2 education building. This year's 2023 Nature Center capital includes $2 million for boardwalk replacement, 412 for phase 2 of SCEB, 15,000 for parking area, 1 million for service building, 10,000 for habitat, code loan repayment, 3.5 million. So then in 2024, Nature Center capital, boardwalk replacement is now 1.5 million. So boardwalk replacement has been split out over 2 years, and to replace the 1-point-something million that was bumped to the next year, the service building replacement and refurbishment has come in at $1 million. So then I'm just gonna reconfirm our previous comment that when you're doing a feasibility study for $20,000 for 1 year, and there's any expectation that $1 million number would pop up the very next year, that should be put in there as a placeholder, so we understand that. I don't know that all elected officials understand that what flows from a feasibility study is millions of dollars of capital investment, but I definitely think that we need to help understand that. Everybody needs help understanding that. So the Millbrook question, why did it appear in one lump and then was moved into 2 lumps? Is that a phasing? And that, is that a phasing? Or should we really be considering bumping everything to the following year because we really aren't anticipating construction until then? So you don't have to answer now unless you know the answers.
I believe it's just timing of the project, and then, I also wanted to say, we also have to be cognizant of the increase in lumber prices and different things going on as well. But the study is not completed as of yet. So my understanding is it's all timing based. So I could be wrong on that, but I don't believe I am.
Thank you for that. In regard to that, I'll note that last year's assessment of the boardwalk replacement was 2.9 million, and this year's it's 3.5 million. So let's have a question. Is that related to increase in materials, or is that about additional options? Could we understand what that increase in 1 year is about? Okay. Sorry, I lost. Okay, here we go. Nature Center capital. Okay, so our comment, seeing the spikes in capital investment, we would like to see them coming. This also relates to that feasibility study, okay? Typically, what we're thinking of is we're doing a feasibility study. We don't necessarily think the next year we're gonna spend $1 million. We're gonna work within that shelf life of that feasibility study to plan that. So that would be that spike. So you might say, we're gonna do the feasibility study in '24, we're gonna put the spike in '27, we're gonna watch it come toward us for that estimate of what that result would be. So that's what that comment is about. Please add the repairs into the CIP, the repairs. These repairs are also found in the narrative of the program plan, similar to what we saw in another parks section. I'm gonna try to get to that portion of this document now. Trying to remember the repairs off the top of my head. Nature Center, here we are. Okay. Excerpted from program plan. Some unexpected repairs have arisen in 2022, including repairs to the bridge over Bathgate Springs on the farmstead property, rot damage to Spring Creek Education Building, trellis and barn beam repair from powder post beetle damage. Agency staff are currently working on obtaining quotes for bridge, barn beam repairs, working with park manager to evaluate extent of trellis damage. Budgeted improvements for 2022 include construction of Phase 2, State College, Spring Creek Education Building, the Welcome Pavilion, visitor parking, pathway lighting. Part 2 of the Boardwalk feasibility study, service building replacement design development, and repainting the Millbrook Marsh Nature Center logo on the barn. Our comment was, please add the repairs as a placeholder into the CIP. The repairs being bridge over Bathgate Springs. Bridges we typically understand are expensive, so we can add a placeholder. They're narrated, but they're not identified in the CIP. Rot damage to Spring Creek Education Building trellis and barn beam repair from powder post beetle damage. So if you could just put a placeholder in the CIP for those. That was our comment. Yes. Then what are the terms of the current lease? Can PSU break the lease at any time? And what do these investments do to the depreciation schedule that lease's terms were made on? So it was a 40-year lease term based on depreciation of assets down to 0, if I understand correctly. So we're gonna make new investments now, multi-millions of dollars of new investments, boardwalk, additional buildings, service, blah, blah, blah. What does that do to the depreciation schedule of the lease? I would assume that now that we're gonna do all these capital investments, now we're way exceeding that 40-year span. So could we get the numbers on that, is what the nature of that comment is. 2 comments together. And then, can PSU break this lease? We're just in writing, could we know the exact terms by which they can? I know we keep asking it, it's sort of like, if it's in writing, it will be helpful for us in our memories. Prioritize boardwalk over other facilities and alternatives. Again, this goes to that prioritization. We like this idea of the free amenity, right? Prioritizing that. There are so many huge investments of parks. Like, let's maybe prioritize that. Core function, not all the accoutrements. Core function of that is that free amenity. And can we get a good strategy about all these many capital investments that we'd like to see in the future? Please elaborate on unsatisfactory work environment. This relates to that service building. We were concerned that unsatisfactory work environment meant like a danger or a liability. So we wanted to ask about that first.
So this is a former chicken coop, capping
Yes.
barn, no restrooms in the building. We've done repairs along the way to try and keep it weather tight, but it is not ideal from the standpoint of it's hot in the summer, cold in the winter. There's only room for the 3 staff that are in there and some storage, and so it really should be, you know, if any of the staff that are proposed come on board, we need to have room. That's one reason the estimate increased when the facility coordinator just ran projected numbers based on, you know, square footage, how many staff, you know, typical, you know, projection numbers, not based on the results of the study yet. So, you know, I think we do need to take care of other assets and other things, but we also need to take care of the staff and make sure they
Absolutely.
can work in a productive work environment.
Thank you. That helps inform, so also I want to make sure that James adds for each of our staff questions or comments, that we can add that housing question in and how it relates to facilities planning. This is a good example of that. So we just talked about that facilities rental person, and then are they going to be housed in this building that's unsatisfactory? And are we creating pressure, unnecessary pressure on ourselves by not solving that problem before we hire additional staff? And then I want to note about, and I'd like this to be in the comments too, that in the previous CIP, that the narrative about this building, and I saw that building, and I have a lot of experience on farms, including renovations, farm stays, new buildings, investments. When I saw that building on our tour, which was really helpful, it would never cross my mind to try to renovate that building, and that explains that $1 million cost. But if what we're really doing is looking at housing 3 to 4 staff, like a prefab building is definitely the way to go on that, or to do a different kind of assessment. I think Harris Township also talked about a prefab. Redoing that building, is concerning. And I'll add then, given our other concerns about investment in Millbrook Marsh and depreciation, that the idea of something that's transportable is actually very appealing. One of the farmers that I work with regularly just purchased from the Amish, then insulated and drywalled a beautiful thing that used to be a shed. And it can be transported. It's the size of a double wide. It would be a lovely working environment, and didn't pay anywhere even close to $1 million. So let's explore this more of an idea of prefab. Okay. Okay. So unsatisfactory work environment. We did that. Okay. We did active adult center, park staffing. One item, we covered a lot of the staff individually. But again, referring back to our question, where is everybody going to be housed, and how does this play into the facilities planning? And then we also have a comment, defer new staff in parks until the job descriptions are up to date. And that we do an analysis of, right, if crossovers. So my understanding is current job descriptions in COG are out of date. It's part of the classification and compensation study. Some of that work was done in the staffing study for parks. Can we hold off on some of these larger staffing choices until we have that facilities, and also the job descriptions and the program planning analysis? Okay, so it's all of a piece. So then, our other comment was clarify prioritization and recommendations for staffing. And again, identify if housing is currently available, and equipment needs. So, okay. I'm gonna go back to the COG document now. Let's see. Did we finish out Millbrook? I'm sorry. Service building, we talked about that. Visitor parking lot, we did not talk about that. Okay, sorry, bouncing back to Millbrook. Visitor parking lot, 10,000 is planned to be budgeted in 2023. Okay, okay. Consistent with facility committee, 10,000 is planned to be 2023 for land management and habitat restoration. I'd be very interested in knowing what Penn State is doing to contribute to this. So could we put that question in here? I know they utilize this as a educational resource. So could we have that as a comment? Does anybody mind that as a question? Is Penn State contributing to the habitat restoration? In kind, staff, whatever that contribution is. Okay, so that is done now. All right, I am at IT study recommendations in the COG document. All right, up to 15,000 is planned for budgeting 2023 for multi-factor authentication. Okay. 66.5 for upgrade of firewall. Okay. 40,000 security improvements in 2023. Okay. And that is it in the COG questions for IT. We did not have any additional IT comments. And we are to the 5-year staffing and study plans. We covered a lot of staffing. I'm going to quickly hit future plans. In our document, it's called program plan, and it's the very last thing that is actually future plans. So that's a correction, but it'll be integrated in this document anyway. It should be integrated in this future studies. Our comments were staffing requests and placement versus resident satisfaction. So I think that also just relates to that comp plan information, and we maybe reconcile some of those requests with that information for us. And then review analysis recognizing municipal staff contributions for NRPA benchmarking. This is kind of a big one. I'm going to take a second to go into it. We're almost at the end, so that's great. If you look at the NRPA tables, I'm sorry, the tables that are in the program plan that utilize NRPA benchmarking, we spent some time talking about the benchmarking. So if you look in the comp plan and review the benchmarks, benchmarked communities, the vast majority, all except one, are city parks departments. And so that's, for us, is really significant, because what that tells us is that all of their budget is under one budget, which is just, we are quite unique here in this region, where our budget for parks is split into 6 different locations, and our staffing is split into 6 different locations. When we talk about comparing our park system to the NRPA benchmarks, what we typically do is we sculpt out everything and remove it except for the CRPR provided data on staffing. What that does, though, is it sets us up for apples and oranges comparison. So if you look at that benchmarking data and you acknowledge that each of those city departments are all inclusive, so they pave their parking lots, they line their parking lots, they do their stormwater management, they do their arbor work, they do their trees, they plant their trees, capital investment, operations, all of it, one budget. And we're comparing a very small sub-budget to those benchmarks and thinking we fall far short. What we need to do to assess that, and this is the nature of this comment, is we need to look at all of the additional capital investments from all of the municipalities that are participating, and all of the additional staffing, right? So Patton has 1 staff full-time completely devoted to parks. We're working on utilizing Treasure here to really understand how much of our staff time is devoted to parks, but our arborist works a lot, right? So other municipalities are the same. So for us to be able to move forward, utilizing these benchmark communities as benchmarks for us, we need to make our data set match their data set. And the way that we do that is we include our additional data from the municipalities on staffing and capital investment. Then we compare budgets. Then we compare total budget. Okay, so that was the explication of that. Any additions to that explication? All right. We have come to the end of this document unless anybody tells me otherwise, and please don't. Thank you all. This was thank you. Do you all have any questions for us? We spend a lot of time on this. We really value COG. We really want to continue a really good collaborative dialogue. Some of our concerns relate to not enough time to have good policy discussions. One thing we would love to see is if you all can come back to us after the collection of the comments, and we'll have another conversation about this as a follow-up, but with a focus specifically on what's anticipated for the 2023 budget. So we can really focus in on that. So, okay. So thank you so much, very much, very much. Okay, thank you. All right, I'm gonna find my agenda now. Does anybody need a moment of break?
We need to do a motion on that.
Oh, yes, we do, ma'am. Thank you very much. Yes, you will find a motion in your agenda, and I will entertain that at this point relating to sending our comments to COG.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Township Manager to forward its comments on the draft 2023 Center Region COG Program Plan and draft 2023-2027 Capital Improvement Plan to the Executive Director no later than August 18th.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you all. And we're moving on to update of the partial exemption for agricultural properties from the Ferguson Township Stormwater Management Utility Fee, introduced by Ms. Centrese Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Provided with the agenda is a very brief narrative, just providing a recap that at the regular meeting held on August 2nd, the Board of Supervisors directed staff to propose an amendment to the resolution for the partial exemption for the agricultural properties from the Ferguson Township Stormwater Utility Fee ordinance. I would like to share a very brief update, and then as staff continues to advance the conversations that are happening and will continue to happen, we want to be very strategic and have a very comprehensive, well thought through implementation of whatever policy amendment we bring to the board. I do not believe that that will take place prior to September 30th, which is the deadline for the partial ag exemption to be submitted to the township for property owners to receive that partial discount on their 2023 stormwater utility fee. Therefore, staff discussed and agreed and have already taken action to prepare a letter and the letter is coming from the Director of Public Works, David Modriker. So that letter was mailed by the Assistant Township Manager and Ms. Faith Norris, our Finance and Tax and Admin Assistant, on Friday. So I want to be very clear to say that property owners that received a partial agricultural exemption on their 2022 stormwater utility fee received a letter from Ferguson Township, or will be receiving in the next 7 days, as it was mailed this past Friday, a letter to remind property owners that they need to take action to have their partial exemption applied to their 2023 stormwater fee. And that action is simply to complete the application that we provided, a printed copy in our mailing to those property owners, to complete that application and return it to Ferguson Township Director of Public Works and our Finance and Tax Director by or before September 30th of 2022. So that is my update to the board.
Yes,
I've taken some time to talk with some property owners who have received the ag exemption or the partial ag exemption, and talking with staff thereafter to better understand how we might be able to increase and facilitate communication to help everyone understand that this application does need to be submitted per policy adopted by the Board of Supervisors in 2021. I'm happy to answer any questions, but the update is that brief, and staff will continue to work on a proposed amendment that I'll bring back to the board for your consideration that can be implemented in 2023.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So much. Okay, any questions for the manager? All right, so it's late, and we really don't have a lot to talk about on this matter. I just want to also just reiterate that this is, we aren't going to have a discussion on it tonight, but our intention is to reduce the burden in a general manner.
That is
Okay, so
correct.
this deadline is in effect. Please submit your applications, and we are working in the future then to reduce that burden. Okay? Okay, great. Let's thank you for that update. Let's go ahead and move on to new business. Consent agenda. We have a special events permit and a special events permit.
This is Patty. Motion to approve the consent agenda as listed in our agenda.
This is Lisa. I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And we're on to our board member request, a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson Center County to recognize and honor Black August for its legacy through histories, figures, and events that shape Black resistance and art that documents Black freedom, struggles, and freedom fighters. This will be introduced by Ms. Tiara Williams. Thank you, Tiara.
Thank you.
Sorry, give you a moment to catch up. We were going real slow and then we went real quick
Do
there.
I just,
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just trying to figure out how to do this here. Yeah, so this proclamation is on Black August, and,
Yeah. Talk a little bit about
oh,
a
well,
celebration.
yeah, so,
Acknowledgement, I'll say.
I guess, right. So Black August is a celebration that was started roughly in the 1970s after political leaders were trying to escape from California prisons and ended up dying in the struggle of that. And it's been recognized in that time, and it's also been acknowledged of all the other revolutions that have happened within the month of August, things like the Haitian Revolution and other things that have happened in the month of August that signify what we call Black August. And during the month of August, we're to fast and only eat at sunset, and to exercise every day, to do research and learn more about our culture, to abstain from any drugs and or alcohol. Similar to what some might do during Ramadan is what is done during Black August. The goal is to encourage the local community to just learn more about what Black August actually is, and to just do research and understand what it means to the community and what it means to America's history as a whole. So that's the goal of this. And it's surrounded around the freedom fighters. I don't know if I said their names, George Jackson and his brother. So yes, that is what Black August is about.
Okay.
Do I need to read how it's written currently, or what would I need to do?
That is up to you. We've done both things. Sometimes when it's later, we don't
Okay,
read,
yeah,
but I'm
okay,
not
okay.
trying to influence you
Right.
when I say that, because Lord knows.
This is actually a
That's cute.
shorter
Always
one,
give the breath
actually,
and time.
but yes.
Exactly.
I guess since this is in front of you all know what it says.
Yes.
I'm not certain if someone would like to make a motion to accept it.
Okay, yeah, I'd be,
This is Patty. I move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the proclamation.
okay, do we have a second?
This is Jeremy, I will second.
Beat you to it this time. Okay, any comments, thoughts, questions on the proclamation?
Thanks for bringing it up, bringing it to us.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes,
All
thank
right.
you.
Okay, seeing none, we'll take a vote. This is just regular voice vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously, and thank you for bringing this to us. All right, next up, a public hearing on a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, accepting a grant of easement for the Pennsylvania State University through tax parcel 19-3-100, introduced by Ms. Martin.
Yes, and thank you, Madam Chair. A brief narrative is provided in the agenda packet. I will just supplement that with sharing with all of you that in 2018, when I started with the township, I was charged with conducting a master plan update to Suburban Park. And of course, it was certainly with the support and a very involved committee, what we referred to as a steering committee, comprised of a variety of individuals representing the township, CRPR, including residents and Parks and Recreation Committee. And I would really sprinkle more information into this narrative or dialogue if it wasn't so late in the evening.
Yeah.
So I will just share with all of you. There's a Suburban Park Master Plan update that was released in 2019. It's available on our website. Part of that master plan update was a strong recommendation as recommended by residents and made its way into the master plan update, was a connection point from the inner dual loop to be constructed as part of the master plan update into the regional shared use path that connects Spiro Boulevard all the way into the Arboretum. So, of course, this provides a great deal of support to the goals that we've expressed here within our parks and recreation systems, as well as the state. So,
Cannot say thank you enough to Penn State University.
Right.
Let's say thanks where thanks is due. Thank you very much. We really appreciate this and this cooperation in meeting these shared goals.
yes, and I also want to give a shout out, as I always do, to staff, but particularly during our transition with leadership, I kind of kicked into that interim role and completely became hands off with moving this forward as we were moving.
Yeah,
We were
plenty of other
knee
things
deep
to
into
do.
the planning efforts of
Yeah.
trying to obtain this easement. And so many thanks to our township engineer, Ron, and the staff that he engaged to support advancing this forward. So he really picked it up where I, quite honestly, had to drop it to move some other things
Thank you.
forward. So many thanks to all of our staff all of the time for their hard work, particularly Ron Seibert, our township engineer, to keep this moving forward. And yes, thank you to Penn State University. I'll even give a shout out to Sharima and the staff there on that side there, ensuring that they were facilitating the process and keeping conversations alive during a time where they have a variety of other priorities themselves.
Right,
And so we
right.
really appreciate that they prioritize this.
Really
Thank
do.
you.
It's no small feat. As I understood, it did involve the Board of Trustees, as far as I understand. I don't know. Anyway, it's a public hearing. Let's open it up to the public. Any comments on this matter? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution approving the grant of easement from Penn State through tax parcel 19-3-100.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thank you. This is a resolution. It's going to be a roll call vote. Centrise.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote, resolution number 2022-18. Ms. Strickland,
Yes.
Ms. Stevens,
Yes.
Mr. Thompson,
Yes.
Ms. Deneny,
Yes.
Ms. Williams.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Motion passes unanimously. Next up, a resolution of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, authorizing the disposition of specific public records in accordance with the procedures set forth in the retention and disposition schedule for records of Pennsylvania municipalities issued July 16th, 1993, and is amended December 16th, 2008. Introduced by Centrise Martin.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will keep this one very short. This is a very routine item that is put in front of the board annually. So provided with the agenda is a narrative as well as Exhibit A, providing a list of storage boxes and their contents to be disposed. And there is a motion provided in the agenda.
Thank you very much. This is not a public hearing. It is just a resolution. Is it a public hearing?
It is a public hearing, Madam Chair.
Okay. Alrighty then, I'm gonna open this up to the public. Would anyone care to comment on this item? Seeing none, I'm gonna close the public hearing, and this is a resolution. I will entertain first a motion. Did I already do that? I didn't,
No.
good. Okay, good, I'm not out of order then. I'll entertain a motion.
This is Lisa. I'll move that the Board of Supervisors adopt the resolution authorizing the disposition of specific public records in accordance with the retention and disposition schedule for records of Pennsylvania municipalities.
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, this will also be a roll call vote. Ms. Martin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a roll call vote for Resolution 2022-19. Mr. Thompson?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Ms. Strickland?
Yes.
Ms. Stevens?
Yes.
Ms. Deneny?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and next up, an appointment of voting delegate to the Pennsylvania Municipal League Annual Summit, also introduced by Ms. Martin.
Thank you. This is also an annual, what I'll refer to as the PML Annual Summit, also similar to a conference forum. This is opened up to elected officials within the Pennsylvania Municipal League for members to attend. We have certainly in the past sent either the township manager and or the chair to serve as a voting delegate. I open this conversation up among the board. Any board members that would like to attend, staff will make the reservations on your behalf and including registration. And then I also would like to encourage the board to appoint a voting delegate, and staff will also submit that to the Pennsylvania Municipal League to confirm who will be representing Ferguson Township at the resolution committee and the annual business meeting.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Okay, so let's have some discussion before we have a motion. So do you want to know if we're going first? I guess, why not? It helps facilitate the discussion of who is going to be voting then, right?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, I'm not going.
I'm not going.
Okay.
I'm interested.
All right, interested in going.
I'll put myself in interested.
Okay, interested.
Yeah, I'm interested in going.
Okay, not going, no. 3 interested, so they are the,
Who's going?
the grouping by which. So typically on this, voting, it's like manager or chair,
Yeah.
or vice chair, or, I'm gonna reflect that I have done this before and was a little bit out of my element. I wasn't sure, there was a lot involved for me, so I don't know if, I just wanna kind of set some expectations. For me, it was difficult to understand how I wanted to represent the board on something. But
So can
you
we
get a
go or
packet.
not? So if,
Yeah.
is the board only gonna pay for the voting member? So like we couldn't
No.
go or not?
The
No.
township will pay for your attendance.
Yes.
If we just wanna go and we don't
You
vote?
want to go.
I would say the
Right.
chair should, I mean, the chair or vice chair should vote, but I just wanted to go to get the
Great.
experience. And I don't
Great.
think I should be voting.
Okay. So everybody, to be clear, all board members can go to this. We're a member of this organization. It's really educational and helpful. I quickly said I'm not going. I have a conflict. I have gone to other of their events. Their one-day sustainability conference, this is their annual meeting. Yes, I highly recommend it for individuals that can take advantage of that. So, yeah. So, yes. The 3 of you that are interested, if you turn from interested to, yes, I'm going, the funds will be there to send you.
Yeah, I'll say yes, I'm
Yes, she's
going.
going.
Yeah, I was thinking about, but, does PML send a list of voting items
Yes.
prior, so we can discuss that
Yes.
here, okay?
I don't know about timeline.
Right, yeah, that's true, yeah, we might not get it till,
I will be
After.
available to provide support in the capacity that is most helpful for the voting delegate. I am tentatively planning to attend this conference, or this summit. Whether I attend or I do not attend, I will certainly be able to provide assistance prior to the voting delegate's attendance.
well, that was my next question. If the manager is attending, you know, it may make sense for you to be the,
I don't want to
It
take
does.
away from the opportunity as an elected official in that position.
I
If you would like to
understand.
do that, please do that. And I will be available to go as a manager.
Here's the
And I'm okay
question
with
though,
that.
so I did look at the schedule, they give you some valuable information in there where you have to vote twice, there's 2 responsibilities for voting. One is at the something resolution something, and the other is at the official meeting or the
Annual meeting on
business meeting.
Saturday and the resolution committee
Friday,
meeting, I
Sunday.
believe, is Friday.
Friday, Saturday, okay, so, and one person has to do both.
Correct.
So, whoever can be there for both should be the person that votes. Friday, yeah, I could look at the time.
Can we do the recommended motion that we name one person with the other person as the alternate? Should they not be able to?
Lisa and Centuries, Lisa is the primary and Centuries is the
Submit the
alternate.
form that way.
I think that makes sense, because,
We're gonna do our own
We would-
thing,
yeah.
what they say.
yeah, we should have an alternate. I mean, I think that makes sense.
I love this idea, thank you.
Let's introduce that to them.
Okay, yes, let's introduce
And also
them
it
this
should-
concept.
We'll be a trailblazer.
Yeah, change their
Yes.
bylaws, we're already changing their bylaws, we haven't even voted yet, okay, great.
Well, in this
let's-
time of, yeah.
It's, I love this idea.
And they're
Let's-
forcing somebody to stay overnight.
Right.
You know, if they're from
It
out of
might
town, to
motivate them
vote the
to
2
do a
different
one-day
days.
schedule.
So I really feel like they should have allowed it to be 2 different people too, because
Mm.
somebody could just go
Add
up for
that
the
to our
day. and-
SVP, or SVP.
Yes, a few suggestions.
I'm going into my motion then.
Please
This is
do.
Patty, and I move that the Board of Supervisors appoint Lisa Strickland as the and Centrise as the voting delegate, and Centrise Martin as the alternate, in the event she's not available, as the voting delegate for the Pennsylvania Municipal League's annual, what is it? Summit.
Summit.
Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay, great. Any further discussion? Thank you and many thanks. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. And we are on to communications of the board. Anything that anyone would care to share? Communications to the board. Okay, nothing.
I
Yeah.
just share, I heard from a resident in Pine Grove Mills, it appears Public Works did some tree trimming in their neighborhood recently, and they had a very good report, just
Nice.
like always, on
Nice.
our services, so.
Nice,
Yep.
wonderful. Thank you. Good to hear. Okay, if nothing else to report, we'll move on to calendar items. We have our usual suspects coming up, and then just to highlight, we have the TSD Public Input Meeting, August 31st. My understanding of that, I'm afraid to announce it if it's incorrect, that there's 2 sessions, one is virtual and one is in person? Yes. Okay, so take a look at our website, there's gonna be more information there, all the specifics of how to participate, but for those that are interested in the West College area Terrace Streetscape District Public Input Meeting. Okay, that's a tongue twister.
Madam Chair, I would
Yes.
like to share something. There was recently a scheduling for a joint meeting with the State College Borough scheduled for August 26th from 12 to 1 p.m. This would be a joint, we'll call it a joint work session with the State College Borough and Ferguson Township that will be held in a hybrid format. More information will be available on our website. This was scheduled after the release of was confirmed after the publication of our agenda. So I wanted to
Excellent.
make that announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, and I also have an announcement that I forgot to make at the beginning of the meeting, which I almost called this morning, which feels right. But we did have an executive session on matters of personnel today, Tuesday, August 16th, prior to this meeting. So if nothing else, and a shout out to Chief Albright up there on the Zoom. Hi, thank you for joining us, and thank you for your report. Hello, and good night. Yep. Okay, so if there's nothing else, I'm gonna take that motion.
This is Patty, motion to adjourn.
Thank you all, we're adjourned.
Thank you.